Chapter 43-75. Domain Lord Tian. He was the god of the underworld's most valued disciple. However, Commander Styx and Marshal Blood Prison, who had been guarding Reincarnation Island in the god realm, were both trusted subordinates of the god of the underworld. If he could protect Reincarnation Island, the god of the underworld would not hesitate to sacrifice Commander Styx and Marshal Blood Prison. Similarly, if he could protect Sky Crane Sector by sacrificing Domain Lord Tian, there would be no suspense in the outcome. All in all, in the god of the underworld's heart, his territory was still the most important. If he lost his trusted subordinates, he could still nurture new ones. The god of the underworld could not make up his mind, so he threw the problem back to Domain Lord Tian. This time, Domain Lord Tian was even more conflicted. He had no choice but to think about the crux of the matter. If I defend this place and the Kenshin invades, I will definitely die. Most of the soldiers under my command will choose to surrender and swear allegiance to the Kenshin. Even if I die, I will still be loyal to His Majesty the God Emperor. In the future, His Majesty the God Emperor will avenge me and treat my family and children well. However, if I lead the elite soldiers and escape, I can only go deep into the void and meet up with His Majesty the God Emperor. In that case, the Kenshin can easily take over Sky Crane Sector without expending a single soldier. Even if His Majesty the God Emperor does not punish me, he will be very disappointed. In the future, when the Kenshin and His Majesty the God Emperor fight, the God Emperor will send me to lead the charge. At that time, I will still be killed by the Kenshin, and my reputation will not be good. Domain Lord Tian pondered and analyzed the pros and cons, but he still could not make up his mind. Deep down, he was naturally more inclined to the latter. He would lead his family and soldiers away from Sky Crane Sector. After all, it was human nature to escape death and stay away from danger. But after he told the military counselor about his worries, the military counselor analyzed the key points for him. Domain Lord, if His Majesty the God Emperor has the heart to protect you, does not care about the gains and losses of the territory, and is more willing to preserve his strength, then he will definitely give the order for you to meet up with him. However, His Majesty the God Emperor did not do so. Instead, he allowed you to decide for yourself. This means that His Majesty the God Emperor doesn't really care about your survival. Perhaps in the eyes of the God Emperor, the fall of the Sky Crane Star Zone was destined. Since that's the case, I feel that you should try to figure out His Majesty the God Emperor's thoughts in order to make the best decision. After listening to the military counselor's suggestion, Domain Lord Tianhe was suddenly enlightened. At the same time, he felt a little bitter and self-deprecating. He finally understood what the god of the underworld meant when he said, "Under the God Emperor, all are ants." Even if the god of the underworld had thought highly of him in the past, that was only because he was still useful and needed him to serve the god of the underworld. Now that he was about to die and could no longer serve the god of the underworld, he was no longer important. The god of the underworld looked at him the same way he looked at the common people. They were all insignificant ants. When he thought of this, he felt a little resentful and indignant. It was obvious that he had become an abandoned pawn. However, he could not act out, and he could not betray the god of the underworld because of this. After 3 days and 2 nights of careful consideration, Domain Lord Tianhe finally made a decision. He chose to send out 1,000 of his most elite guards, led by 4 trusted generals, to escort his family out of the Sky Crane Star Zone and into the depths of the void to meet up with the god of the underworld. He would gather countless powerhouses and soldiers in the Sky Crane Star Zone to guard Sky Crane Star and wait for the Kenshin to attack. Even if he knew that he was going to die, he wanted to fight the Kenshin to the death. Even if he died, he wanted to die tragically so that the god of the underworld would feel guilty and treat his family well. Early in the morning, the sun rose from the east. The god-slaying battleship, which had concealed its whereabouts, silently flew across the sky and landed outside the Divine Crane Palace. The battleship hovered in the sky, and Ji Tianxing walked out of the cabin door with Bai Long. The master and disciple stood high in the sky, looking down at the towering mountain peak and the majestic palace below. Ji Tianqing could not help but smile when he saw that the palace looked calm on the outside but was actually on full alert. I've underestimated Domain Lord Tianhe. I thought he would lead the soldiers and escape. Bai Long also smiled playfully. This guy is a fake peak god king. In the eyes of the god of the underworld, his status is far inferior to Commander Styx and the Blood Hell Marshal. Now, the 5 god emperors can only strengthen their defenses and wait for Master to find them for a decisive battle. How can they spare the energy to care about their forces and disciples? Domain Lord Tianhe did not escape. I guess he has thought it through and realized that he has already been abandoned by the god of the underworld. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "It has been 10 years since I left the god world. In these 10 years, Domain Lord Tianhe has been guarding against my invasion day and night. I guess he is under a lot of pressure." Bai Long could not help but laugh. He is under so much pressure. I'm afraid he will immediately admit defeat and surrender when you appear later. Master, do you plan to subdue him and let him take over the Sky Crane Galaxy for you? Ji Tianqing nodded slightly. It will be difficult for me to nurture other experts and forces to take over the Sky Crane Galaxy in such a short period of time. If I can subdue Domain Lord Tianhe, it will be the easiest. With that, he was about to bring the White Dragon out in the open to attack the godly Crane Palace. At this moment, Ji Ku and Yun Yao's voices rang in his mind. Tianqing, we have broken through to the 8th level of the Divine King realm recently. Why don't you leave this matter to us? Brother Tianqing, we have been cultivating in seclusion for so long and we have finally broken through to the 8th level of the Divine King realm. You have to give us a chance to train ourselves. Ji Tianqing had been traveling in the Sky Crane Galaxy for 10 years. Ji Ku, Yun Yao and the others had been cultivating in seclusion in the distorted spacetime for 500 years. They had broken through to the 8th level of the Divine King realm many years ago. Now, they had reached the middle stage of the 8th level of the Divine King realm. Their strength was extremely stable. Moreover, with their extraordinary talent and aptitude, although they were only at the 8th level of the Divine King realm, their combat strength was already comparable to a peak Divine King. Ji Tianqing naturally would not reject their request. He replied, "All right. Anyway, there are only about 50 Divine Kings in the Divine Crane Palace. Other than Domain Lord Tianhe, no one else can pose a threat to you." The key was that he would be there to protect his 2 wives. Nothing could be safer. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing opened the space tunnel of the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower. With a flash of white light, Yun Yao and Ji Ku appeared in the sky together. Then, Ji Tianqing kept the god-slaying battleship and landed outside the Divine Crane Palace with his 2 wives and Bai Long. When the guards and Divine Kings who were guarding the Divine Crane Palace saw the appearance of unfamiliar experts, they immediately sounded the alarm. Swoosh! 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 In the blink of an eye, several hundred Divine Lord Realm guards surrounded Ji Tianqing and the others under the lead of 10 Divine King powerhouses. The guards and Divine Kings were holding swords and Kenshin soldiers. They were vigilant and had accumulated powerful energy in their bodies. Chapter 43-76. Who are you? Tell us your name. This is a forbidden area. Outsiders are not allowed to come close. Otherwise, we will kill them without mercy. The 2 leaders of the guards, who were in the godly king realm, had to muster up their courage to shout out those words. In fact, everyone knew that the mysterious expert who dared to appear in such a manner at this time was most likely the legendary Kenshin. Moreover, among the 4 mysterious experts in front of everyone, the man was dignified and mysterious, while the woman was beautiful and had an extraordinary temperament. This further confirmed everyone's guess. However, they had to stand up and speak out to stop Ji Tianqing and the others from barging into the Holy Crane Palace. Therefore, the two guard commanders could only bite the bullet and pretend to be dumb as they shouted out loud. Ji Tianqing put his hands behind his back and looked at the group of guards calmly. Bai Long stood behind him with his arms crossed and a cold smile on his face. He was waiting to watch a good show. As for Yun Yao and Ji Ku, they naturally stepped forward bravely and let them handle this matter. Yun Yao ignored the guards and looked at the gate of the Holy Crane Palace expressionlessly. She said coldly, "I'm only here to look for Territorial Lord Tian He. I don't want to hurt the innocent. If you don't want to die in vain, quickly go and inform Territorial Lord Tian He and ask him to come out and meet us." Ji Ku also looked serious and said coldly, "You don't look like fools. You should be able to guess who we are and understand the consequences of being stubborn. I'm only warning you this once. Bear the consequences." The two of them did not kill them directly. Instead, they warned the guards seriously. After all, they considered the possibility of subduing Territorial Lord Tian He. These guards would also be used by Ji Tianqing in the future. This was indeed a deterrent, especially Ji Ku's words. It was equivalent to pointing out their identities and origins. When the hundreds of guards heard it and confirmed the other party's identity, they were so frightened that their faces changed drastically. They could not help but retreat. The few godly King Realm guards wanted to stop them instinctively. But when the words reached their mouths, they couldn't say it out loud. It was human nature for the guards to fear death and Kenshin. These divine King Realm guards didn't need to do anything. They were just as fearful and respectful. However, all the experts in the God Realm were afraid of Kenshin, so it was reasonable for unknown people like them to be intimidated by Kenshin's power. Thinking of this, the guard commanders felt a lot more relaxed and hurriedly took a few steps back. The two leaders of the guards also made a decision in an instant. They bowed to Yun Yao and Ji Ku in unison, and then silently bowed to Ji Tianqing. They were well aware that the handsome young man in the white robe with a divine aura was the most terrifying even if he didn't speak. "Seniors, please wait for a moment. We will report this to the Domain Lord." The two bodyguard commanders bowed to Yun Yao and Ji Ku and asked their subordinates to report the news. Their attitude was quite respectful. As long as the other party didn't take the initiative to attack, they weren't willing to start a fight. Compared to their loyalty to the Domain Lord, their own lives were more important. In any case, Yun Yao and Ji Ku didn't want to fight or kill. It wasn't too much for them to throw the problem to Domain Lord Tian He. As for the result, it was obvious. Domain Lord Tian He was deep in thought in his study. After hearing the two bodyguards' report, his face instantly turned black with anger. "Damn those B*****stards. I've repeatedly instructed them that if they discover any suspicious intruders, they don't need to report it and just take them down. Those two good-for-nothings actually ignored my orders." Domain Lord Tian He flew into a rage, but what he said wasn't his true thoughts. In fact, the reason why he repeatedly instructed the guards to kill any suspicious intruders was because he had the intention of sending the guards to their deaths. After the guards fought with Kenshin, he could be more alert and have more time to react. However, he didn't expect those guards and the guard commanders to be so cowardly and throw the problem to him. This was the reason why he was so angry. After his anger subsided, Domain Lord Tian He responded without hesitation. "You, go and tell them that I'm cultivating in seclusion. Ask them to wait patiently for 2 hours before I come out." Domain Lord Tian He pointed at one of the guards and gave the order. The guard immediately bowed and left the study room. Domain Lord Tian He then ordered another guard, pass down the order immediately. The entire army is to prepare for battle. Activate all the external arrays. Also, inform Governor Lin to be on full alert. Be prepared to activate the internal defenses at any time. The guard was stunned for a moment and thought to himself, what is the Domain Lord doing? Is he really going to war with Kenshin? Heavens, we don't want to die. Out of instinct, this guard also hoped that Domain Lord Tian he would retreat in the face of difficulties and not lead everyone to their deaths. However, Domain Lord Tian he insisted on doing so. His attitude was overbearing, and his tone was unyielding. This guard could only obey. After the guard turned and left the study to pass down the order, Domain Lord Tian he took out a set of king-grade armor and carefully put it on. He then took out a broadsword that was as wide as a palm and hung it at his waist. After tidying his hair and golden crown, he stepped out of the study and headed to the square outside the palace. When he arrived at the square, there were already 5,000 elite guards gathered in the huge square. Among these 5,000 guards, there were more than 40 godly king-grade experts. In fact, there were 15,000 guards and close to 100 godly king-grade experts inside and outside the Holy Crane Palace. This was the most elite force in Domain Lord Tian he's hands. They were also gathered in recent years. However, most of the guards and godly king-grade experts had their own missions. They needed to form an external defense circle and set up an internal trap. At this moment, only these 5,000 people could follow Domain Lord Tian he into battle. Move out. Domain Lord Tian he looked around and swept his gaze across the 5,000 soldiers. His tone was sonorous as he gave the order. He took the lead and flew to the entrance of the palace. Even though the 5,000 soldiers were nervous, some were hesitant, and some were even thinking of retreating. However, Domain Lord Tianhe had taken the lead and personally led the troops into battle. With so many soldiers following him, it was impossible for those who had ulterior motives to back down in public. It should be known that Domain Lord Tian he would definitely kill deserters in public to boost morale and stabilize the morale of the soldiers. As such, the 5,000 soldiers followed Domain Lord Tian he to the entrance of the palace. However, they did not walk out of the palace. Instead, they stood at the entrance of the palace and stared at Ji Tianqing and the others. The defensive array that protected the entire palace had been activated. A huge 5-colored light shield covered a radius of 100 miles. Thousands of guards appeared on the tall palace walls. All of them were holding sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. They were fully activating the defensive power of the divine array. Chapter 4377. Domain Lord Tian he, along with many godly kings and guards, stood inside the palace. They were facing off against Ji Tianqing and the others, separated by a thick defensive array. As a result, the hundreds of guards and 10 godly kings outside the palace were in an awkward situation. They did not expect Domain Lord Tian he to be so resolute. He had gathered his soldiers and was ready to fight without even showing his face. Are we going to charge in under the orders of the Domain Lord or surrender to Kenshin? Oh my God! We are still locked outside. Does the Domain Lord not care about our lives? What should we do? Once the fight starts, we will be cannon fodder. Seeing that both sides were at daggers drawn and murderous, the hundreds of guards muttered in their hearts and looked left and right anxiously. When Yun Yao and Ji Ku saw Domain Lord Tian he's stance, they knew that he had made his choice. Ji Ku took out her divine spear. Blazing divine flames began to rise from the soles of her feet and condensed into a fiery red armor that gradually covered her entire body. In the blink of an eye, she became a goddess of war wearing a fiery red divine armor and holding a 7-foot divine spear. She was extremely valiant. She looked coldly at Domain Lord Tian he, who was above the palace gate, and asked in a deep voice, "Domain Lord Tian he, have you thought about the consequences?" Domain Lord Tian he looked deeply at Ji Tianqing before his gaze landed on Yun Yao and Ji Ku. He sneered, "Ah! I have 10 years to consider and prepare. Of course, I have already made my decision." After that, he looked at Ji Tianqing and said coldly, "Lord Kenshin has personally appeared, but he does not plan to attack. Instead, he wants these 2 women to deal with me. Kenshin, you are too arrogant and look down on others." Ji Tianqing glanced at him coldly. He did not even bother to answer. Yin Yao took out her sun and moon swords and pointed them at Domain Lord Tian He. She said calmly, "How can a weakling like you be worthy of Kenshin's personal attack? The two of us sisters are enough to flatten Divine Crane Palace." Everyone knew how strong Kenshin was. The Sky Crane Region Lord wasn't stupid enough to say that Kenshin only knew how to hide behind women. He just felt that it was a pity that he couldn't die under Kenshin's sword. In his mind, only by dying under Kenshin's sword would he be able to show his loyalty to the god of the underworld. Both sides had said what they needed to say, so they didn't waste any more words and were about to start fighting. Ji Ku's almond-shaped eyes glanced at the hundreds of guards outside the palace. He pointed the divine spear in his hand and shouted coldly, "Surrender or die." Obviously, the first to bear the brunt was the group of guards who were in an awkward position. The 10 Divine King Realm guards were dumbfounded. Hundreds of guards stepped back and some couldn't help but shake their heads. Instinctively, they were afraid. However, the Sky Crane Region Lord was watching them from above the palace gate. They couldn't run away in front of everyone. With Ji Ku's divine spear pointed at them and Ji Ku's aura intimidated them, the guards had no choice but to make a decision on the spot. It was still the 2 guard commanders who took the lead. They hesitated and slowly withdrew their weapons, took off their armors, and bowed to Yun Yao and Ji Ku. "We are willing to surrender." The 2 guards suppressed the humiliation and guilt in their hearts and expressed their allegiance to Yun Yao and Ji Ku. The hundreds of guards heaved a sigh of relief. They removed their weapons and armor and bowed in unison to express their surrender. "That's good. Step aside and wait for your orders." Ji Ku withdrew his spear and ordered the guards to step aside and wait. Seeing this, the Sky Crane Region Lord was so angry that his face turned ashen. His eyes were filled with rage and he couldn't help but curse. "You cowardly traitors! Do you still have any sense of shame? Do you still know how to write the words loyalty?" It wasn't just the Sky Crane Region Lord. The other generals and Divine King experts also reprimanded the guards who surrendered. The hundreds of guards were scolded until their faces turned red. They lowered their heads in shame and didn't dare to look at the crowd's expressions. The 2 guards were also ashamed and resentful. However, they endured the humiliation and raised their heads to look at the Sky Crane Region Lord. They shouted angrily, "Sky Crane Region Lord! We admit that we are spineless and shameless for surrendering at the last minute. However, you forced us to do so. Lord Kenshin is going to unify the world. This is the trend of the times. It's not something we can resist. Furthermore, by locking us outside, you're sending us to our deaths. Since you are heartless, don't blame us for being unrighteous." When the hundreds of guards heard the guards' rebuttal, they immediately felt confident and comforted. They shouted at the Sky Crane Region Lord, "You forced us to do this." The Sky Crane Region Lord was furious, but he couldn't outtalk the guards. At the same time, Yin Yao had already brandished her Sun-Moon dual swords. She executed her divine power and took the lead to attack the God Palace's gate. Swish! 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 She executed her divine sword technique and slashed out 6 crescent-shaped sword lights. They slashed at the 5-colored light shield. Bam! 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 The 5-colored divine light shield trembled violently from the sword lights. Countless divine light fragments burst out. The violent and devastating shock wave turned into a 5-colored flood that spread in all directions. Some of the mountain peaks around the God Crane Palace had their peaks shaved off. A large patch of forest was destroyed. The shock wave was too powerful. The hundreds of guards were filled with fear. They hurriedly retreated to a distance to watch the battle. Although Yun Yao's strength was almost on par with a peak Divine King's, The defense array of the god Crane Palace was set up by the god of the underworld 1,000 years ago. It was a genuine supreme-grade king-level divine array. With Yun Yao and Ji Ku's strength, they would need a certain amount of time to break the defense array. Moreover, the Sky Crane Region Lord gave an order on the spot. He led tens of thousands of guards to operate the divine array and launch a counterattack. They used the power of the defense array to release sharp divine light blades that covered the sky and attacked Ji Tianqing and the others. Ji Tianqing naturally didn't want Yun Yao and Ji Ku's strength to be wasted on breaking the defense array. Therefore, he personally executed his divine power and executed his divine power. He slashed out a sword light that could split the sky and earth. It carried a terrifying power and slashed at the defense array. Bam! Crack! There was an earth-shattering explosion. A huge gap was created in the five-colored defense array. Countless fragments burst out. The supreme-grade king-level defense array was strengthened by thousands of guards. However, it was still slashed open by Ji Tianqing with one slash of his sword. It could be seen how powerful his strength was. The thousands of guards were so frightened that their faces turned pale. They couldn't believe their eyes. Even the Sky Crane Protectorate Lord was scared witless, and his hands trembled. If Kenshin really attacked, he and the 10,000 guards in the God Crane Palace wouldn't be able to survive. They would die without a doubt. Fortunately, Kenshin stopped after breaking the defense array. Yun Yao and Ji Ku held their weapons. They turned into a stream of light and passed through the gap. They charged into the God Crane Palace. Chapter 43-78. The soldiers under Territorial Lord Tianhe's command were hoping that the defensive array could help them fend off Yun Yao and Ji Ku. At the very least, they could rely on the defensive array to deal with Yun Yao and Ji Ku for a few hours. As long as they could deplete Yun Yao and Ji Ku's divine power or severely injure them, they would have a chance to win. Many godly monarchs and soldiers could tell that Yun Yao and Ji Ku were Kenshin's capable generals and top-notch experts. If they could get rid of these two experts, it would be much easier for them to join forces to deal with Kenshin. However, no one expected that Kenshin would destroy the defensive array with one slash and destroy everyone's hope. When Yun Yao and Ji Ku brandished their divine weapons and charged into Divine Crane Palace, they were already unstoppable and filled with murderous intent. Swish! 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 Ji Ku held the flaming divine spear with both hands and unleashed a torrential inferno. It was like a sea of fire that covered the sky and poured down in torrents. The entire Divine Crane Palace was drowned in multicolored flames. The Nirvana Divine Flame and Nirvana Divine Flame with peerless might could be said to be able to melt everything. Regardless of whether it was the palaces and residences that were protected by the defensive array or the soldiers who were wearing armor and had divine power shields, they were all turned into ashes in the sea of fire. Especially those godly monarch realm guards. They could not resist at all and were turned into ashes when they came into contact with the flames. In the blink of an eye, the torrential inferno released by Ji Ku killed more than 1,000 godly monarch realm guards. The combat strength and powerful lethality that she displayed made countless soldiers tremble in fear. After taking off her flaming armor and putting down her flaming divine spear, she was a rare beauty. After putting on her armor and holding her flaming divine spear, she was a peerless god of death. Yun Yao, who was wearing a white dress, moved elegantly like a beam of moonlight twinkling in the sky. The dual swords of sun and moon in his hands unleashed endless golden and silver sword light, which rained down on the Divine Crane Palace like a downpour. This scene was incomparably gorgeous, as if a meteor shower had descended from the sky. However, the destructive power of the dazzling sword light was incomparably shocking. Quite a few palaces and mansions were blasted into ruins by the sword light, and debris flew everywhere. Hundreds of Divine Lord Realm guards also had their armors and weapons shredded by the sword light, being torn to shreds on the spot. Just like this, Yun Yao and Ji Ku charged into the Divine Crane Palace. They only executed one divine ability, ultimate skill, and instantly killed 2,000 Divine Lord Realm Guards. It was not just the countless soldiers who were intimidated. Their hearts were filled with fear as they retreated in fear. Even the several dozen God Kings paled as their eyes flickered with fear. Of course, the Sky Crane Region Lord was also trembling with fear, but he could not shrink back at the last minute. He could only brace himself and shout, ordering his soldiers to continue fighting. Yun Yao and Ji Ku saw that their thunderous methods had intimidated many soldiers, but the Sky Crane Region Lord was still stubborn. Hence, the two of them looked at each other and understood each other's intentions without communicating via divine consciousness. The two of them tacitly attacked at the same time, executing powerful divine abilities and ultimate skills. They attacked the Sky Crane Region Lord and the 30-odd God Kings beside him. Ji Ku waved his divine spear and released hundreds of divine fire light pillars to kill the 30-odd God Kings, forcing them to retreat and dodge in a sorry state. Meanwhile, Yun Yao took the opportunity to execute her Sword Dao ultimate skill and attacked the Sky Crane Region Lord with an invincible stance. Although she was an 8th level Divine King, the Sky Crane Region Lord was a peak Divine King. However, her aura was more powerful and sacred, completely suppressing the Sky Crane Region Lord. Thousands of soldiers broke out in cold sweat for the Sky Crane Region Lord when they saw this scene. They were deeply worried. Everyone was actually worried that the Sky Crane Region Lord would not be a match for Yun Yao and would be severely injured by the sword light that filled the sky. The Sky Crane Region Lord knew his own capabilities, and he was also very clear that he was just a peak Divine King, but he was completely useless. However, in this situation, Yun Yao had locked on to his aura and was going to kill him. He could not retreat and could only face her head-on. Wild Dragon 10,000 feet. The Sky Crane Region Lord roared angrily. He held his broad sword with both hands and used all his strength to execute hundreds of sword lights to meet Yun Yao's attack head-on. In the next moment, the sword lights that the two of them executed collided in the sky. There were dull bangs, and hundreds of millions of divine light fragments exploded. When the two of them clashed, they were actually evenly matched. Even the sword light collapsed. However, Yun Yao's expression did not change at all, and she did not retreat even half a step. However, the Sky Crane Region Lord was forced to retreat 3 steps. His face was pale, and his blood was flowing in the opposite direction. His aura also became chaotic. It was obvious that his strength was not as strong as Yun Yao's. At this moment, Yun Yao did not stop waving her 2 swords. She also executed her Sword Dao secret art and pursued the Sky Crane Region Lord. The Sky Crane Region Lord did not have time to adjust his breathing. He could only forcefully endure the chaotic divine power and waved his heavy sword to fight again. His trusted god generals and more than a dozen god kings had reacted long ago. Everyone rushed over without any regard for their own safety. They wanted to join forces to besiege Yun Yao and help the Sky Crane Region Lord out of this predicament. However, Ji Ku was already prepared. He waved his divine spear with his right hand and released a sky full of divine fire to block a group of Divine King experts. His left hand also unleashed 3 phoenix claw prints that covered the sky. They descended from the sky and enveloped the god generals. Ji Ku blocked dozens of Divine King experts by himself. It was impossible for him to kill those Divine Kings, and it was even difficult for him to severely injure them. However, the Nirvana Divine Flame that she executed was too terrifying. The scene of her killing 1,000 people in an instant was too shocking. Therefore, the dozens of Divine Kings did not dare to let their guard down. They could only use all their strength to defend themselves. In this way, Ji Ku successfully stalled dozens of Divine King experts and achieved his goal. Although she could only stall for a short period of time, at most a few breaths of time. However, this was enough for Yun Yao to deal with the Sky Crane Region Lord. She knew that Ji Ku had to take charge alone. Not only did he have to stall dozens of divine king experts, but he also had to withstand the combined attacks of thousands of guards. He was under a lot of pressure. Therefore, she ignored the attacks of thousands of guards and attacked the Sky Crane Region Lord with all her might. She used all her strength and executed her most powerful secret art. She also pushed the power of the Sun-Moon dual swords to the limit. The sound of air being torn apart could be heard continuously. The gold and silver sword lights flashed continuously. They were like dense raindrops that enveloped the Sky Crane Region Lord. In a short span of 3 breaths, she actually attacked 9 times in a row. She unleashed the most powerful combat power in her life. In the end, the destructive shockwave turned into rings of 5-colored ripples. The palaces, lofts, and houses in all directions were destroyed and turned into ruins. The Sky Crane Region Lord's armor was also torn apart by the sword lights. The broadsword in his hand was sent flying, and more than 10 bloody wounds were left on his body. Some of the wounds were in between his eyebrows, chest, and other vital areas. They went deep into his bones. It was conceivable that the Sky Crane Region Lord was severely injured. His strength was rapidly draining, and his divine body was on the verge of death. Chapter 43-79. Ji Ku managed to buy 3 breaths of time for Yunyao. Yunyao did not disappoint and successfully injured Domain Lord Tianhe. Unfortunately, it was not enough to injure him. Yunyao could only end this battle if she captured Domain Lord Tianhe or killed him. However, Ji Ku could not hold on any longer. She was surrounded by more than 30 godly king experts and had to endure the combined attacks of 3,000 guards. She was in a perilous situation. Fortunately, her flaming armor was a supreme-grade king-level divine armor that Ji Tianqing had specially made for her. That was why she could withstand the attacks of so many experts. If it was a supreme-grade king-level divine armor, it would have been destroyed and she would have been severely injured. Even so, she was panting heavily. Her divine power was greatly depleted and her face turned pale. Her divine power was in disorder and her combat power was rapidly declining. Originally, she had completed her mission. However, when she saw that Yunyao had only injured Domain Lord Tianhe and failed to capture or kill him, she could only grit her teeth and continue fighting. She did not hesitate to overdraw her divine power and stimulate her potential to maintain her powerful combat power to stop the 30 godly king experts. For this, she even used the power of the Heavenly Star Chain and the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower. With the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower protecting her, the pressure on her was greatly reduced. Yunyao saw that she had used 2 trump cards and 2 supreme-grade divine artifacts to protect herself. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. She could roughly estimate that Ji Ku could still hold on for a few more breaths with the help of the 2 supreme-grade divine artifacts. Therefore, she also unleashed her full strength without regard for anything else. She wanted to get rid of Domain Lord Tianhe as quickly as possible. Sword breaking 9 heavens. Sword of falling moon. Great Qiankuan sword. Sword of great light. Yunyao took out her trump card and unleashed a power that could destroy the heavens and earth. Wherever the sword light passed, the sky was sliced into pieces and turned into a fragmented void. The destructive shockwave destroyed the entire divine crane palace. None of the palaces, courtyards, and pavilions were spared. They were all reduced to rubble. The 1,000+ divine lord realm guards that were affected were also torn to shreds by the powerful shock wave, all of them torn to shreds. As for the Sky Crane Region Lord, there was no need to mention his fate. His fate was very miserable. Not only was his armor and divine weapon destroyed, but his divine body was also destroyed. Even though his divine body looked relatively complete, without missing any arms or legs, he was still in a daze. However, there was already a huge bloody hole in his chest, and the space between his eyebrows had also been pierced through by the sword light. The vitality of his divine body had already been cut off. Only one godhead remained intact, but it was in an awkward situation. Just as his godhead was about to leave his body and escape from Yun Yao's pursuit, Yun Yao used her divine ability to suppress his godhead and capture it. No matter how much Domain Lord Tian he struggled, he couldn't break free from Yun Yao's grip. Anger, humiliation, and a strong sense of unwillingness filled Domain Lord Tian He's consciousness, almost causing him to go berserk. Finally, 3 breaths of time passed. Even if Ji Ku had the protection of 2 supreme-grade divine artifacts, she couldn't hold on any longer. Otherwise, she would definitely suffer from internal injuries, her divine foundation would be damaged, and her power would drop greatly. She was filled with anxiety and worry as she turned her head to look at Yun Yao's situation. When she saw Yun Yao waving her sword and shattering Domain Lord Tian He's divine body, she heaved a sigh of relief as though a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. The divine generals and divine kings under Domain Lord Tian He's command also realized that the situation wasn't good. When they saw Domain Lord Tian He being captured, they were instantly stunned. They simply couldn't believe that Domain Lord Tian He, who was at the peak of the divine king realm, had his body destroyed and his godhead captured by an 8th-degree divine king within a short span of 10 breaths. This was simply the greatest irony, the biggest joke in the world. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they absolutely wouldn't dare to believe that this was true. Among the 6,000 over divine monarch realm soldiers, there were still some who didn't know what had happened and were still attacking Ji Ku together. However, Yun Yao had captured Domain Lord Tian He's godhead and scattered the pieces of his divine body into the sky. She shouted angrily in a dignified tone, "Everyone, stop what you're doing. Your Domain Lord Tian He has been captured by this seat." A sudden cold shout resounded in the air above the ruins within 100 miles, intimidating everyone. Thousands of soldiers stopped casting their spells and looked at Yun Yao in unison. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw Domain Master Tianhe's corpse fluttering in the air. His godhead was in Yun Yao's hand, and no matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't escape. All along, Domain Lord Tian He had been invincible in the hearts of all the soldiers. After all, he was a peak divine king. All the soldiers felt that a peak divine king was the strongest person under the God Emperor, an undefeatable expert. Other than the 5 God Emperors, only Kenshin could suppress him. Today, Kenshin didn't attack Domain Lord Tian He. Domain Lord Tian He could definitely defeat the 2 beautiful women. However, the soldiers didn't expect that Domain Lord Tian He would be defeated within 10 breaths of time in a one-on-one battle with the woman in white. Moreover, he was defeated so miserably. Everyone couldn't accept this result. For a moment, they were stunned, not knowing what to do or say. At this moment, Ji Ku was circulating his energy to regulate his breathing while shouting coldly, "What are you all still standing there for? Why aren't you surrendering to Kenshin? Don't tell me you all don't want to live anymore." The God Kings and guards were not stupid either. They obtained an important piece of information from her words. As long as they surrendered to Kenshin, they would be spared from death. Originally, the soldiers were very afraid of Kenshin. However, they were coerced by Domain Lord Tian He and had no choice but to participate in the battle. Since Domain Lord Tian He had been captured, there was no need for them to risk their lives. Hence, there were immediately over a dozen divine king powerhouses who reacted faster, hurriedly admitting defeat to Yun Yao and Ji Ku, surrendering to Ji Tianqing. With those divine kings taking the lead, the thousands of soldiers no longer felt any psychological pressure. They didn't care about honor and dignity. They put away their weapons and surrendered. After a few breaths of time, many of the hesitant soldiers chose to surrender. There were still more than 500 soldiers and a few divine generals who were loyal to Domain Lord Tian He. They refused to surrender. Ji Ku didn't show any mercy. He waved his divine spear and released divine flames that filled the sky. He killed those soldiers and divine generals on the spot. As a result, all the divine kings and soldiers in the ruins surrendered. Domain Lord Tian he was infuriated when he saw this. He flew into a rage, but there was nothing he could do. Even though he still had dozens of divine kings and 5,000 elite guards lying in ambush under the divine crane palace, he had also set up a series of traps. However, from the looks of the current situation, those ambushes and traps were useless. Yunyao grabbed his godhead and said coldly, Domain Lord Tian he, you only have two choices now. Die or surrender. Logically speaking, he should cherish the chance that Yunyao was willing to give him a chance to live. Unexpectedly, Domain Lord Tian he's attitude was very firm. He sneered and said, you want me to surrender? In your next life. After saying that, he actually used all his strength to detonate his godhead and perish together with Yunyao. Chapter 4380. With Yunyao's current strength, it wouldn't be difficult for her to defeat and capture Domain Lord Tian he. However, it was impossible for her to suppress Domain Lord Tian he and prevent him from self-destructing. Once Domain Lord Tian he successfully self-destructed, she would be severely injured even if she didn't die since she was so close to him. Seeing Domain Lord Tian he's godhead blossoming with multicolored radiance, as well as the power that could destroy heaven and earth, the several thousand soldiers in the vicinity were scared out of their wits. Countless people couldn't help but roar in their hearts, damn it. Domain Lord Tian he, you bastard, you may want to die, but we want to live. While roaring in their hearts, the thousands of soldiers hurriedly retreated and turned to flee. With their speed, it was impossible for them to escape from the range of the explosion. However, their survival instincts drove them to run away recklessly. Yunyao, who was in the most danger, was fearless and not worried at all. Ji Ku, who was very close to her, was about to activate the heavenly star chain and use this supreme-grade divine artifact to protect Yunyao. However, she saw Ji Tianqing, who had been silently watching the battle, turn into a white light and disappear. Therefore, she immediately felt relieved. She silently put away the heavenly star chain and continued to regulate her breathing. They all knew that with Ji Tianqing present, it would be a joke if Domain Lord Tian he wanted to self-destruct. They had absolute confidence in Ji Tianqing's strength and methods. As expected. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing instantly teleported hundreds of miles and appeared beside Yunyao. He didn't use any techniques. He just casually stretched out his hand and took Domain Lord Tian he's godhead from Yunyao's hand and held it in his palm. Then, Domain Lord Tian he's godhead stopped moving. Not only did it stop expanding and pulsating, even the explosively flashing five-colored divine light was extinguished, becoming dim and lifeless. Just like that, Domain Lord Tian he's self-destruction was easily neutralized. It wasn't that he was afraid of Ji Tianqing's strength and stopped self-destructing, but that he was suppressed. In Ji Tianqing's hands, he couldn't use any strength at all. He was like a mosquito frozen in ice. Yunyao looked at Ji Tianqing and smiled. She said regretfully, unfortunately, I still need you to stop him from self-destructing. Ji Tianqing comforted her, after all, you're both in the 8th layer of the Divine King realm. It's already amazing that you can do this. If you want to forcibly suppress and stop the other party's self-detonation, you must be 8 times stronger than the other party. As soon as he finished speaking, Huang Xiaolong's right hand clenched lightly, crushing Tian he's godhead into dust. Domain Lord Tian he didn't even have the chance to say his last words before he passed away so hastily. Then, Ji Tianqing checked on Ji Ku's condition. Fortunately, Ji Ku wasn't injured, but he had used up too much of his divine power. He was mentally exhausted and needed to rest. Ji Tianqing channeled some divine power into her and helped her relieve a lot. Then, he let her return to the distorted spacetime of Jiutian 10 Absolute's tower to rest. Ji Tianqing would handle the rest. Yunyao also returned to the distorted spacetime to cultivate. Originally, when Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku, and Yunyao were talking, the thousands of soldiers could take the opportunity to escape. In order to not be affected by the battle or to avoid the impact of Domain Lord Tian's self-detonation, they had all retreated thousands of miles away. That short moment just now was the best time for them to escape. However, with Kenshin present, the thousands of soldiers were intimidated by his strength and reputation. They didn't even dare to think of escaping. Everyone knew that Kenshin was powerful and resourceful. Although Kenshin was talking to Yunyao and Ji Ku, his divine senses had covered a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. He was monitoring all the movements in this area. If any soldier dared to escape, Kenshin wouldn't even need to lift his hand. He could kill them instantly with just a thought. In addition, many of the soldiers were smart people. They knew that there was no benefit in escaping now. They would also have to bear a huge risk. However, if they stayed, the consequences would be different. First of all, they had already surrendered to Kenshin. Kenshin definitely wouldn't kill them. Secondly, if Kenshin wanted to control Sky He Galaxy, he needed them to work for him. They could totally stay and continue to hold their previous positions. They just had to work for Kenshin. Of course, those who weren't smart and didn't have outstanding abilities could keep their original positions. Those who were smart and resourceful had a great chance of promotion. As for those god generals and god kings, if they could gain Kenshin's favor, they might have a meteoric rise in power. After understanding this point, not only did the thousands of soldiers not resist the sword god, they even wanted to get close to and curry favor with him. Therefore, when they saw Ji Tianqing and White Dragon standing above the ruins, the thousands of soldiers quickly went to greet them. They didn't panic. Instead, they got into formation and bowed to Ji Tianqing in unison to show their allegiance. Previously, when Domain Lord Sky He was still alive, they were forced to surrender. Now, it was different. Domain Lord Sky He had been killed. They had to submit and be loyal to Kenshin. Ji Tianqing's stern gaze swept across the crowd. He said in a deep voice, "I'm very gratified that all of you can turn over a new leaf. However, this matter isn't over yet. I still need everyone's cooperation to help me subdue the remaining soldiers." He had already used his divine perception to monitor the entire place. He had discovered the soldiers and god kings hiding underground. Previously, when Yunyao and Ji Ku were fighting, the powerful shockwaves from the battle had destroyed a portion of the underground traps. However, most of the underground palaces were still intact. The soldiers and god kings were still hiding underground. The awkward thing was that Domain Lord Sky He was dead. The soldiers and god kings didn't know what to do. They were in a state of confusion. When the 6,000 soldiers above the ruins heard Ji Tianqing's words, their eyes lit up. "We will obey Lord Kenshin's orders." The thousands of soldiers bowed in unison. They quickly drew their swords and sabers and surrounded the ruins. Everyone knew that this was the first mission that Kenshin had given them. They had to take this opportunity to perform well. The ordinary guards were fine. They only needed to carry out their mission and form an encirclement. The dozens of god kings, especially the 10 divine generals, were thinking even more. This was the best opportunity for them to perform. Therefore, the 10 god generals had the idea of relieving Kenshin of his worries and troubles. They took the initiative to persuade the soldiers in the underground palaces and the various traps to surrender. "Brothers underground, stop resisting stubbornly. Quickly surrender to Lord Kenshin. Domain Lord Sky He has been executed. Lord Kenshin has taken over Sky He Galaxy. It's a foregone conclusion. Don't make a mistake. Lord Kenshin is the embodiment of justice. He is the son of heavenly Tao. He is here to save Sky He Galaxy and return freedom to all citizens. Brothers and soldiers underground, do you want to become enemies with the entire star field? Do you want to become enemies with justice?" Chapter 4381. The 10 divine generals were very proactive. In fact, they had their own selfish motives. The godly king experts and soldiers hiding underground already knew that Domain Lord Tianhe had been killed. They had put away their weapons and were in a state of hesitation and observation, not knowing what to do. They did not even think about it, nor did they have the courage to besiege and ambush Kenshin again. It could even be said that they were waiting for Kenshin to give the order, and they would immediately surrender. The 10 divine generals shouting on the surface sounded like they were persuading them to surrender, but in reality, they were portraying the soldiers and godly kings underground as stubborn people. In this way, even if the godly kings and soldiers surrendered and pledged their loyalty, they were forced to do so. In Kenshin's mind, the status and importance of those godly kings were naturally not as high as the 10 divine generals. Of course, their little thoughts could not be hidden from Ji Tianqing. However, he did not stick to these details. He pretended not to notice anything unusual and quietly waited for them to surrender. Not only did White Dragon see through the 10 divine generals' thoughts, but he also figured out what his master was thinking. He continued to watch coldly from the sidelines, waiting to watch the show. Soon, the godly king experts underground made up their minds. Under the lead of 2 great generals and 2 guard commanders, 5,000 soldiers left the underground and came to the ruins. They also lined up neatly in formation and uniformly bowed to Ji Tianqing, expressing their surrender and loyalty. In this way, Ji Tianqing easily killed Domain Lord Tianhe and took over the godly Crane Palace. Surrendering and pledging their loyalty was not just lip service. As usual, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and shot out a sheet of white light. It floated in the sky and presented a screen of light. The content of the heavenly oath appeared on it. Dozens of godly king experts and more than 11,000 soldiers had long heard of Kenshin's rules. They recited the oath of surrender in unison. To date, this was the largest number of people reciting the oath of surrender at the same time. 15 minutes later, when everyone finished reciting the oath of surrender, a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. It was also extremely powerful and shocking. Everyone was surrounded by divine light and a wisp of Taoist rhyme hovered above their heads. High up in the sky, dense divine lightning lit up, and a deafening roar resounded. The formless pressure of the heavenly Tao enveloped everyone present, causing all the soldiers to turn pale. They could not help but lower their heads in fear. After a full 100 breaths of time, the heaven and earth phenomenon gradually dissipated. After the terrifying divine might of the heavenly Tao dissipated, everyone gradually returned to normal. Next, Ji Tianqing began to issue a series of orders. The divine Crane Palace had already been destroyed, and there were ruins everywhere. However, only the palaces and mansions on the surface were destroyed. The underground palace was not seriously damaged. Previously, when Yunyao, Ji Ku, and Domain Lord Tianhe were fighting, Ji Tianqing had secretly used his divine ability to seal the battlefield. The shockwaves from the battle spread out and destroyed dozens of mountains in the vicinity. However, the mountain range under their feet, the head of the spirit vein, was perfectly preserved. This was because Ji Tianqing had already thought about it. After dealing with Domain Lord Tianhe, he would still build the divine palace here as the center of power. The next priority was naturally to order the more than 11,000 soldiers to rebuild the divine palace as quickly as possible. In order to save trouble, Ji Tianqing did not have any requirements for the divine palace. He just rebuilt it according to the previous divine Crane Palace. Even the name of the divine palace did not need to be changed. It was still called Divine Crane Palace. However, the owner of Divine Crane Palace had to be chosen again. In the entire Sky Crane Galaxy, there were no forces, clans, or experts who were Ji Tianqing's former subordinates. He could only choose the 3 strongest divine kings from the dozens of divine kings in front of him to take over the position of Domain Lord Tianhe. After a simple observation and test, Ji Tianqing appointed the patrolling general as the new Star Lord and Domain Lord Tianhe. The patrolling general had always been the right-hand man of Domain Lord Tianhe. He held great power and patrolled the entire galaxy, overseeing thousands of planets. He knew the entire Sky Crane galaxy like the back of his hand. Ji Tianqing was very assured that he would control the military forces and manage the Sky Crane galaxy. Most importantly, the patrolling general had a straightforward nature. He was not related to Domain Lord Tian He by blood or master. When Domain Lord Tian He was in power, the patrolling general was very loyal to Domain Lord Tian He. Since Domain Lord Tian He was dead and Ji Tianqing had taken over the Sky Crane galaxy, the patrolling general would be very loyal to him. Moreover, the patrolling general swore allegiance to Ji Tianqing along with everyone else. Not only would he be very loyal, but he would also do his best to complete all the tasks that Ji Tianqing gave him. In addition to the patrolling general being the Star Lord, Ji Tianqing also promoted the guard commander and a general to the position of deputy domain lord. They would assist the domain lord in managing the entire galaxy. At the same time, they would also check and supervise the domain lord. The three of them would check and supervise each other. They could directly send messages to Ji Tianqing to report the situation. In this way, they could ensure that the domain lord would not outwardly comply or play any dirty tricks. Ji Tianqing only appointed the three main positions. He did not need to worry about the other positions such as the guard commander, general, and Star Lord. He handed them over to the new domain lord and the two deputy domain lords to make the final decision. In any case, only over 3,000 soldiers were killed in today's battle. Over 20 God King experts had fallen. To Sky Crane Galaxy, this loss was nothing. It was not a serious blow. The vacant positions only needed to be adjusted slightly to fill them up. Sky Crane Galaxy could also operate normally. In order to resolve these matters, Ji Tianqing stayed in Divine Crane Palace for 10 days. In a short 6 days, the reconstruction of Divine Crane Palace was completed. The new domain lord and the two deputy domain lords also made adjustments to the generals and star lords under their command. Everything was in order. Sky Crane Galaxy was basically under Ji Tianqing's control. Then, he gave the order to abolish slavery, eliminate the remaining forces of the Azura God Emperor, and restore freedom to all the people. After the domain lord and the deputy domain lords received the order, they immediately called for a meeting with the Star Lords and conveyed Kenshin's order to every planet. Not only that, the newly appointed patrolling general also led 3,000 elite soldiers to patrol the entire star field. He would spend decades patrolling the thousands of planets in the galaxy to ensure that Kenshin's order was carried out. If any Star Lord did not carry out the order, they would be mercilessly punished. Half a month later, the news that Kenshin had unified Sky Crane Galaxy spread throughout the galaxy. Trillions of people in thousands of planets knew about it. Thus, the entire galaxy was in a state of joy and joy. Seeing that the situation had stabilized, Ji Tianqing did not stay any longer. Before he left, he summoned the domain lord and the two deputy domain lords. After giving them some instructions, he quietly left Sky Crane Galaxy. The god-slaying battleship sailed into the endless void and headed straight for its next target, Sky Phoenix Galaxy. Chapter 4382. The Heavenly Phoenix Star Zone was about the same size as the Heavenly Crane Star Zone. Similarly, billions of stars were arranged in an irregular pattern. Among them, thousands of stars were inhabited by intelligent life forms. Between the Heavenly Phoenix Star Zone and the Heavenly Crane Star Zone, there was a large void zone with few stars. On the side close to the Heavenly Phoenix Star Zone, there was a galaxy that was billions of miles long. It was formed by hundreds of thousands of stars. All the stars in the Heavenly Phoenix Star Zone were arranged in a pattern that looked like a phoenix spreading its wings. That was how it got its name. The galaxy that was billions of miles long was like a belt of light surrounding the phoenix, setting off its nobility and elegance. In the seemingly gorgeous galaxy, there was actually a great danger and crisis hidden. The stars in the galaxy actually flowed back and forth. Even though it looked very beautiful from the void, as if countless light spots were swimming around, it was impossible to see them from afar. However, only when one was in the galaxy would they know how terrifying the power of the flowing stars was. Once touched by a group of meteors, even if it was a divine king powerhouse, it was extremely likely to perish too. Apart from that, the galaxy was also filled with black holes of various sizes. They were like vortexes that could swallow god-kings and battleships passing by at any time. Ordinary people would not dare to cross the galaxy and head straight to the heavenly Phoenix star zone. They would have to take a detour of billions of miles to avoid the entire galaxy. However, Ji Tianqing's god-slaying battleship was a supreme-grade king-level divine battleship. Naturally, it was not afraid of the dangers in the galaxy. Bai Long steered the battleship and traveled in the void. 2 months later, they entered the galaxy. During that time, they encountered a meteor shower and more than a dozen black holes. However, Bai Long was able to sense the danger in advance and steered the god-slaying battleship to avoid it. If there were meteors that could not be avoided, it would be fine even if they collided with the god-slaying battleship. While the god-slaying battleship was traveling, Ji Tianqing, Yin Yao, and the others had been cultivating in the distorted spacetime. Even though Ji Tianqing was already very powerful, he did not forget to improve his strength at all times. He was working hard to reach 70 times the strength of a peak god king. Yin Yao, Ji Ku, and the others were also working hard to improve their strength. Although they did not say it out loud, they were well aware of it. Ji Tianqing had already unified the god world, and now he was exploring the void outside. Once he conquered the heavenly Phoenix starfield and traveled through the heavenly unicorn starfield, this trip to the void would be over. Ji Tianqing had already traversed through the 9 great star fields, and whether or not he could find any clues about Heavenly Dragon Emperor's disappearance, he would definitely seek revenge from the 5 god emperors. Perhaps 20 years later, or perhaps 30 years later, the two sides would inevitably engage in a decisive battle. Everyone also hoped that they could increase their strength as much as possible before the final battle. Only then would they be able to help Ji Tianqing in the future and play an important role. It wasn't just Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Ji Wuhan, Nan Gong Ao, and Lin Shui who thought this way. Even the soldiers and god kings who followed Ji Tianqing thought the same. Thus, as the deity-slaying battleship hurried along, everyone was abnormally quiet. There was no disturbance at all. The deity-slaying battleship took 10 days to pass through the vast galaxy without any mishaps. 3 months after Ji Tianqing left the heavenly crane starfield, the deity-slaying battleship successfully entered the heavenly phoenix starfield. Just like before, the deity-slaying battleship concealed its whereabouts and aura, and no one noticed it. Bai Long steered the deity-slaying battleship and cruised through the heavenly phoenix starfield. He ignored the smaller and lifeless planets and focused on planets inhabited by living beings. Every few days, he would find a planet inhabited by living beings and wake up Ji Tianqing, who was in the middle of cultivating. Ji Tianqing would secretly sneak into the planet and use all kinds of skills and techniques to investigate the heavenly dragon emperor's whereabouts. When he didn't find anything on one planet, Bai Long steered the deity-slaying battleship away and continued to search for the next planet. He also didn't find any clues on 2 planets. Bai Long and Ji Tianqing didn't feel anything and continued to rush to other planets. Just like that, time passed quietly, year after year. Unknowingly, 11 years had passed. Ji Tianqing investigated more than 1,000 planets, but the results were the same as before. He didn't find anything. He could find some clues that proved that the heavenly dragon emperor had come to the heavenly phoenix starfield more than 1,000 years ago. However, the heavenly dragon emperor was just passing by and stopped by occasionally. Nothing major happened. The results were depressing, but Ji Tianqing wasn't discouraged. His next target was the center of the heavenly phoenix starfield, the highest level Big Dipper star. Heavenly Phoenix Star. There were over 100 dazzling stars in the void that covered an area of 1 billion miles. The heavenly Phoenix Star was in the middle. Not only was it the largest, but it was also the most dazzling. The entire star was shrouded in a dazzling red divine light, like a sun. It was worth mentioning that the heavenly phoenix starfield was actually controlled by the Prajna god emperor. The ruler of the heavenly phoenix starfield was one of the most capable generals under the Prajna god emperor. He was called the Seven Slaughter God King. It was said that this person was more than 10 feet tall, had a head of red hair, and looked ferocious, like a ferocious god of death. As long as the gods put in some effort, they could use all kinds of methods to improve their appearance, making themselves look more beautiful, elegant, and noble. For someone like the Seven Slaughter God King, who didn't care about his appearance and even deliberately maintained a ferocious appearance, he either had a psychological problem or was really cruel. There were also rumors about the origin of the name Seven Slaughter God King. There was a chilling story behind it. The Seven Slaughter God King was born in a strange and mysterious family. This family was famous for giving birth to freaks and cultivating powerful killing machines that shocked the world. Every 1,000 years, this family would cultivate a group of divine monarch elites and use cruel and ruthless methods to stimulate the growth of these divine monarchs. Every once in a while, a group of divine monarchs would compete and fight with each other. If they lost, they would die. As the strength of each divine monarch increased, the geniuses who broke through to the divine king realm survived, while the geniuses who failed to break through to the divine king realm died one after another. Even when they reached the divine king realm, the geniuses still had to kill each other. In the end, only one person could survive and become the best of the geniuses, representing the family to travel the world. More than 10,000 years ago, a burly and ugly red-haired divine king survived to the end with his strength and tenacious will. In the last battle before he succeeded, 7 divine king realm geniuses teamed up to kill him. This was because the 7 divine king geniuses knew that the red-haired divine king was the greatest threat to them, and his methods were the most ferocious. As long as they dealt with the red-haired divine king, their chances of survival would be much higher. But no one would have thought that the 7 God King geniuses would be killed by the red-haired God King after fighting for half a month. Chapter 43-83. Even though the red-haired God King had paid a terrible price to kill 7 of his companions. His divine body was almost destroyed, and his divine spark was also on the verge of shattering. But he still won. With his own strength, he successfully killed 7 of his companions, and became famous in one battle. After that incident, he was called the #1 genius of the family, and could be said to be unprecedented. In order to heal his injuries, the family spent countless manpower and wealth, and it lasted for a whole 1,000 years. After the red-haired God King recuperated in seclusion for 1,000 years and recovered from his injuries, he appeared in the world again and received the title of 7 Slayers God King. And he did not disappoint, successfully reaching the 9th level of the Divine King realm, and became a rare top expert in the world. Everyone thought that the 7 Slayers God King would represent the family in the world, helping the family to clear its name, expand its power, and eliminate strong enemies. But no one expected that the 7 Slayers God King spent a few hundred years pretending to eliminate dissidents for the family. In reality, he had the intention to take revenge, and swallowed the family bit by bit, and finally destroyed the family. The family's 3,000+ people were all killed by him with various methods, and their fates were tragic. Back then, when this incident broke out, it even caused quite a stir in the primal chaos continent and the divine world. Back then, when Kenshin was in the primal chaos continent, he had challenged various experts, and had also thought of challenging the 7 Slayers God King. But the 7 Slayers God King claimed that he only killed people, and did not spar. So, Kenshin dismissed the idea of challenging him. Later on, the War of the Gods broke out, and Kenshin was besieged by 5 peak God Kings, and died in the void. And after Kenshin died, the 5 peak God Kings comprehended the eternal heavenly book, and broke through to the God Emperor realm one after another. The Prajna god emperor had just taken control of the primal chaos continent, and urgently needed to recruit troops and talents. Back then, the primal chaos continent was still very chaotic, and there were many experts, and countless powerful forces ruled over a region. The Seven Slayers God King was one of them, and he controlled the 32 regions in the south of the continent, and was known as the Nantian Lord. Before Kenshin died, although the Prajna god emperor was a peak god king, he had no plans to rule over the primal chaos continent. Back then, Kenshin only ruled over a region, and did not have any plans to rule over the entire continent. The entire continent was controlled by many ancient clans and was also divided by many top forces. The Seven Slaughter God King was one of the strongest forces. After Kenshin's death, Hanya and the four peak divine kings studied the heavenly book together and successfully broke through to the God Emperor realm. She was already the #1 empress in the world, and the other four god emperors controlled the various continents. Thus, Hanya could only follow the example of the other four god emperors and establish a force to subdue the entire primal chaos continent. The God King of Seven Kills was her first target. Logically speaking, at that time, Hanya's foundation was still very weak. She should have first subdued those weaker forces, then from weak to strong, and finally subdued the Seven Slaughter God King. However, she did the opposite. Relying on her strength as a god emperor, she ignored the tens of thousands of experts under the God King of Seven Kills and directly charged into the God King of Seven Kills' divine palace. She used her supreme divine ability to isolate the space, isolating all of the Seven Slaughter God King's trusted experts outside. In the independent space, only she and the Seven Slayer God King were fighting one-on-one. The result was indisputable. Hanya only used one move and easily defeated the God King of Seven Kills. However, Hanya did not kill the God King of Seven Kills. She promised him that as long as he surrendered and was loyal, he would be spared from death and would be able to hold great power. The God King of Seven Kills had long heard of Hanya's name, and knew that she was known as the #1 beauty of the God realm, even more noble and holy than the nine heavens Xianyu. He had also secretly admired Hanya, and dreamed of holding hands with her and becoming a couple. However, reality dealt him a heavy blow. Hanya's strength made him feel despair and ashamed of his inferiority. He originally thought that he would be killed by Hanya God Emperor to serve as a warning to others and intimidate the other forces. He did not expect Hanya to be willing to forgive him. He naturally surrendered on the spot and pledged his loyalty to Hanya. Of course, Hanya would definitely use some methods to control the God King of Seven Kills to maintain his loyalty. These were all minor details that were not worth mentioning to outsiders. After that battle, the God King of Seven Kills became the #1 general under Hanya, loyal and devoted. After the news of Hanya easily subduing the God King of Seven Kills spread, it caused a huge uproar in the primal chaos continent, causing countless clans and forces to be inexplicably shocked. After successfully establishing her might, it became much easier for Hanya to subdue the other forces. In addition, she had the famous God King of Seven Kills under her command. Whenever she met a force that refused to submit or stubbornly resisted, the God King of Seven Kills would use cold-blooded and cruel methods to kill the other party. In the process of Hanya subduing the entire primal chaos continent, the God King of Seven Kills made great contributions, and killed over 100,000 gods. More than 10 years later, Hanya God Emperor unified the primal chaos continent and began to establish a new order and government. Under her guidance and help, the God King of Seven Kills also successfully broke through to the peak God King realm. Even Hanya God Emperor's disciple, God King Chi Xia, reached the peak God King realm 100 years later than the God King of Seven Kills. After that, the situation in the God realm stabilized. The 5 God Emperors decided to leave the God realm and head to the depths of the universe's void to explore the mysteries of the heavenly Tao and pursue the power of immortality. 100 years later, they indeed made a discovery in the depths of the void, and found the mystery of the gray fog. However, researching the mystery of the gray fog required countless manpower and an immeasurable amount of cultivation resources. In order to achieve their goal, the 5 god emperors decided to transfer god monarch and god king experts from the god realm. In addition, they also wanted to enslave all the gods in the god realm. They established a slave system, and forced the slaves and common people to constantly mine cultivation resources for them. Only the god realm's cultivation resources were not enough, so they conquered the various star fields in the outer space and enslaved the living beings of those star fields. With the supply of resources from the god realm and the various star fields, the 5 god emperors' consumption requirements were finally satisfied. They led tens of thousands of god monarch experts to study the mystery of the gray fog day and night. The 5 god emperors stayed in the depths of the void, and could not leave the mystery of the gray fog, or else all their previous efforts would have been for naught. They could only let their confidants and right-hand men take over the god realm's territories and the star fields they conquered. Pan Rua's right-hand men, the 2 people she trusted the most, and also the 2 strongest experts, were God King 7 Kills and God King Crimson Dawn. The other god emperors often had 2 or 3, or even 4, peak god kings under their command. Pan Rua's strength was relatively weak, and she only had 2 peak god kings. After careful consideration, she decided to let her most trusted disciple, God King Crimson Dawn, take over the god realm's territory, the primal chaos mainland. As for God King 7 Kills, he was sent to the outer space to control the heavenly phoenix star field. Although the 2 peak god kings obeyed her every word, other than the matters she ordered them to do, the 2 peak god kings had a lot of power. On this point, Pan Rua had fulfilled her promise to God King 7 Kills, and indeed, she let him take control. God King 7 Kills left the god realm to control the heavenly phoenix star field alone, and he was satisfied to be the carefree master of a star field. He was even more loyal and respectful to Pan Rua God Emperor. Chapter 43-84. When Ji Tianqing subdued the primal chaos continent, Divine King Crimson Afterglow had enough time to prepare. In the end, before Ji Tianqing attacked the primal chaos grotto heaven, Divine King Crimson Afterglow brought 50,000 soldiers and endless cultivation resources to escape from the god realm. Ji Tianqing believed that Divine King 7 Kills, who was also a trusted subordinate of the god emperor, most likely knew about this matter. According to the nature of the god emperor, she would definitely choose to preserve her strength and let Divine King 7 Kills take the soldiers and cultivation resources to retreat in advance. Ji Tianqing had already mentally prepared himself. After going to the heavenly phoenix planet, he would most likely be empty-handed. He reckoned that Divine King 7 Kills had already left the heavenly phoenix planet with the soldiers and cultivation resources. The current heavenly phoenix planet was very likely in a chaotic era where heroes rose together. All the continents were in war. Those top forces would definitely fight each other to seize control of the continent and the heavenly phoenix planet. Even between the divine kingdoms of each continent, for various reasons, fierce battles would break out. If the situation developed to that extent, Ji Tianqing would have to spend some time and effort to subdue the heavenly phoenix planet. However, the situation was exactly the opposite of what he had expected. The god-slaying battleship entered the heavenly phoenix planet and landed on a certain continent to investigate for a few days. Ji Tianqing discovered that the entire continent was actually very calm and orderly. Not only were there no conflicts or wars between the major forces and the divine kingdoms. Even the commoners were silent like cicadas in winter, looking cautious. Clearly, the commoners still did not know what had happened. They only felt the danger and enormous pressure, so they did not dare to be as relaxed as usual. Ji Tianqing carefully investigated again and found that all the major forces and divine nations were pulling back their defenses and were on high alert. In fact, many divine king powerhouses had been transferred away. Ji Tianqing quietly captured the leaders of 2 forces, as well as the king of a certain divine kingdom, and interrogated them about what had happened. In the end, he learned from the two leaders and the king that the heavenly Phoenix planet had always been very calm, and nothing unusual had happened. However, a few years ago, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace had suddenly issued a decree, summoning many God-King masters from various continents to gather at the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. In addition, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace also ordered the many divine nations on the various continents to tighten their defenses and be on high alert, waiting for orders at any time. No one knew what was going on. They could only guess that a war was about to break out from Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace's series of actions. As a result, the continents were in a state of panic over the past few years. The common people were also in a state of panic and were extremely cautious. After understanding this situation, Ji Tianqing had a premonition that the real situation was probably the opposite of what he had expected. He knocked out the two leaders and the monarch and used a secret technique to restrict them so that they could only wake up a few months later. After that, Ji Tianqing boarded the god-slaying battleship and headed straight for the divine Phoenix continent in the middle of the heavenly Phoenix planet. There were 6 continents on the heavenly Phoenix planet, and the divine Phoenix continent was located in the middle. It had vast land, abundant divine power, and abundant cultivation resources. As early as tens of thousands of years ago, the divine Phoenix continent was the center of power of the entire heavenly Phoenix planet. At that time, the planet master lived on this continent. In the southwest of the divine Phoenix continent, there was an alternate dimension that used to be a secret realm that contained countless treasures. Later, it was occupied by the heavenly Phoenix planet master and transformed into a cave abode, which became the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. After the 7 Slaughter God King occupied the heavenly Phoenix planet, he seized the cave abode and occupied the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. He was a boorish person and did not care about the details. He used everything in the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace and did not modify it. He was even very confident that he did not kill the original heavenly Phoenix planet master. Instead, he captured him and kept him under his command to continue working. Of course, the 7 Slaughter God King did not trust the heavenly Phoenix planet master too much and did not give him too much power. Instead, he made him a general and commanded 3,000 soldiers. To the heavenly Phoenix planet master, this was a great humiliation. Every day he lived, he had to bear the humiliation of failure, which set off the 7 Slaughter God King's strength and breadth of mind. However, the heavenly Phoenix planet master did not choose to commit suicide to preserve his reputation. He endured the humiliation and lived on. After thousands of years of settling and tempering, the people of the heavenly Phoenix planet gradually forgot about what happened in the past and rarely talked about him. He seemed to be used to this ending. He peacefully became a god general and led troops to serve the 7 Slaughter God King. The god-slaying battleship quietly entered the divine Phoenix continent. After approaching the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace in the southwest of the continent, Ji Tianqing put away the god-slaying battleship and wandered the continent alone. He infiltrated a few god nations and used various methods to gather information. Half a month later, he could basically confirm that the 7 Slaughter God King had not left the heavenly Phoenix planet but had stayed in the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. Moreover, the 7 Slaughter God King had transferred more than half of the Star Field's God King elites to the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace a few years ago. Obviously, the 7 Slaughter God King knew that Kenshin had killed the Prajna God Emperor's incarnation and occupied the chaotic continent. He should have guessed that Kenshin would most likely come to conquer the heavenly Phoenix Star region, so he had made preparations in advance. The current heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace had at least 100 God King elites and tens of thousands of God monarchs. However, what Ji Tianqing could not figure out was why the 7 Slaughter God King did not flee when even the Crimson Dawn God King knew to lead the troops to escape. What confidence and reliance did he have that he dared to stay behind to guard the heavenly Phoenix planet? Even the Prajna God Emperor's incarnation had been defeated. Even if the 7 Slaughter God King had gathered tens of thousands of experts, they would only die. Harboring these doubts and guesses, Ji Tianqing quietly approached the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace and prepared to sneak in. The entrance to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace was in a vast mountain range. It was located at the bottom of a cliff that was tens of thousands of feet high. The cliff looked as if it had been cut by a knife or an axe. It was straight and steep, and it was made of smooth rock. The entrance was very well hidden and was covered by a king-level supreme-grade divine array. On the surface, it looked like a piece of rock without any abnormalities. However, no matter how brilliant the disguise was, it could not escape Ji Tianqing's probing. Ji Tianqing cast the divine eye mystic art. Not only did he see the location of the mystic realm's entrance clearly, he also saw through the structure of the defensive grand array. At the same time, he also discovered that there were 8 God King elite standing guard at the entrance, in addition to 200 high-ranked Divine Lord Realm guards. Very clearly, the mystic realm's entrance was the focal point of the 7 Slaughter God King's fortification. Not only was the defensive grand array activated, possessing 100% defensive power, he even sent so many elites to stand guard. No matter how powerful Ji Tianqing's strength was, once he forcefully breached the array, he would also be unable to conceal it and would definitely be detected by those elites. Wanting to enter the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace under the premise of not alerting the other party, he still had to expend some effort and methods. Ji Tianqing's first thought was to wait and see, or wait for an opportunity to sneak in as usual. If someone entered and exited the mystic realm, he could seize the opportunity to sneak in. It was absolutely undetectable. Hence, Ji Tianqing hid near the cliff and silently stared at the mystic realm's entrance, waiting patiently. Chapter 4385. Although Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace's defenses were very tight, Ji Tianqing believed that there was no such thing as an absolute tight defense in this world. As long as it was a defense formed by manpower, there would definitely be flaws and loopholes. After all, the Heaven Phoenix Starfield had been peaceful for the past few years. Nothing unexpected had happened. Ji Tianqing believed that those soldiers had been vigilant and on guard for a few years. There would definitely be a time when they would let down their guard. As long as he waited patiently, there would definitely be a turn for the better. However, after waiting for 10 days, Ji Tianqing realized that he had underestimated the soldiers' endurance and the 7 Slayer God King's determination. A full 10 days had passed. The 8 God Kings and 200 Sir God Guards guarding the mystic realm's entrance were still like statues. They did not move an inch. Not only did they not move, but they also maintained their vigilance and did not let down their guard. More importantly, the mystic realm's entrance had been closed. It had never been opened, and no one had entered or exited. Ji Tianqing thought that he could not wait any longer. If no one entered or exited the mystic realm's entrance for a year, wouldn't he be delayed for a year? Moreover, the 8 God Kings and 200 Sir God Guards guarding the mystic realm's entrance could only last for a month at most before they could rotate. In any case, Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace had more than 100 God Kings and tens of thousands of Sir God Guards. They had plenty of manpower. Every month, they would be rotated to ensure that every batch of people guarding the entrance would be full of energy and would not feel tired. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing decided not to waste any more time and directly attacked. No matter how many experts there were in Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace, he had enough confidence and certainty to ensure that he would not be harmed. Taking a step back, even if both sides were to engage in an all-out battle, he had many followers and more than 10,000 soldiers in his god-slaying battleship. How could a mere Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace pose a problem for him? Swoosh! Ji Tianqing flew to the mystic realm's entrance and took out the Burial of Heaven sword. He held the sword with both hands and activated 100% of his strength. With a solemn expression, he stabbed with the sword. Sword of Daytime. He did not stab at the center of the defensive array, nor did he stab at the guards and God Kings. Instead, he stabbed at a node of the defensive array. That was the weak point of the defensive formation that he had found through observation and understanding the structure of the defensive formation. Swish! A dot of cold light bloomed and suddenly appeared at the entrance of the secret realm. The 8 god kings and 200 guards guarding the entrance immediately sensed that something was wrong. They subconsciously tightened their grip on their Kenshin weapons. However, before they could react, an earth-shattering explosion occurred. The speck of cold light struck the weak point of the defensive formation in 1/5 of an instant, and it rapidly expanded to become a gigantic scorching sun. Boom! Following a deafening boom, the scorching sun expanded violently, bursting forth with boundless golden light that covered a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers. All the areas covered by the golden light, be it the cliffs, the towering mountains, or the verdant forests, were turned into dust and disappeared without a trace. The mountain range within a radius of tens of thousands of miles instantly turned into scorched earth and ruins, and endless smoke and dust rose into the air. As for the defensive array of the mystic realm, it bore the brunt of the most terrifying explosion. The outcome was obvious. The defensive array was blasted into pieces, and a huge gap appeared, revealing countless loopholes. The wild shockwave engulfed the 8 low and mid-god kings, and drowned the 200 guards. They did not have time to dodge, nor did they have time to send out a warning. They did not even have time to scream before they were turned into ashes. The Supreme King-level defensive array that the 7-Slayer God King had spent a lot of effort and 5 whole years to create was actually broken by Ji Tianqing's sword. Although the power of this sword was so strong because he was proficient in array formation and had accurately struck the weak point of the array. But more importantly, his strength was already close to that of a god emperor. That was why he was so graceful. The earth-shattering boom was still reverberating between heaven and earth. The multicolored divine light and the raging shockwaves were still spreading. At this moment, Ji Tianqing had already crossed the gap in the defensive array and flew into the mystic realm. He still maintained his invisible state and hid his aura. He sped through the mystic realm and rushed toward Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace at the fastest speed. This mystic realm was very big, with a radius of 1,000,000 miles. It was a small world of its own. As expected, it was rich in divine power and resources. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace was in the depths of the mystic realm. Naturally, it was located on a land with the most abundant divine power. The entire group of palaces occupied a radius of more than 300 miles. There were hundreds of palaces and courtyards, as well as many pavilions and towers. As Ji Tianqing was rushing toward Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace, he saw many god kings leading a large group of Sur gods toward the entrance of the mystic realm. Obviously, the other party had already discovered that the defensive array of the mystic realm had been destroyed, but they did not know the exact situation. That was why they were rushing over to check it out. Ji Tianqing did not stop at all, nor did he have any plans to kill those guards and god kings. His goal was very clear. It was to imitate how Pan Roa had captured the 7-Slayer God King. With absolute strength, he would avoid tens of thousands of soldiers, find the 7-Slayer God King, and fight him alone. To take the head of an enemy general in the midst of an army of 10,000, not only did one need great strength, one also needed a calm mind. In a short 200 breaths of time, Ji Tianqing arrived at Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. At that moment, the 3,000 guards who were rushing to the entrance of the mystic realm to check out the situation were not even halfway there. In other words, the 7-Slayer God King only knew that the defensive array had been destroyed, but he did not know the exact situation. Under normal circumstances, the 7-Slayer God King should be filled with anxiety, making arrangements and deploying, issuing all kinds of orders, and waiting for the soldiers to report back. Therefore, after Ji Tianqing entered Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace, he did not bother about the hundreds of palaces in the surroundings. He also ignored the tens of thousands of guards. He avoided many of the defensive forces and sneaked into the highest point of the mountain range, the most majestic palace. That was the core of Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace, the most sacred place. The conference hall was where the seven-slayer God King gathered his generals to discuss important matters. Ji Tianqing sneaked into the conference hall, but he realized that the hall's doors were tightly shut. There was no one in the hall. Since there was no one in the conference hall, then he turned to his second target, the seven-slayer God King's study. This was his first time coming to Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. He was not clear about the structure of the Divine Palace, nor did he understand the habits of the seven-slayer God King. He could only tell that there were more than 30,000 soldiers in Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace, all on full alert, carrying out all kinds of operations in an orderly manner. Some teams were setting up formations all around, preparing to meet the enemy. Some teams were guarding the array bases all over the Divine Palace, activating the defensive array with all their might. There were also some powerhouses secretly lurking around, ready to unleash a thunderous strike at any time. Ji Tianqing easily avoided those open and hidden sentries, and found the seven-slayer God King's study without anyone noticing. However, the study was also quiet and empty. Chapter 43-86. There was no one in the conference hall, no one in the study either. Ji Tianqing secretly cursed in his heart. Truly a crafty rabbit with 3 burrows, crafty to the extreme. From the information that he inquired, he could roughly analyze that the seven-slaughter Divine King was that sort of careless fellow without any shrewdness. He did not expect that this fellow was actually so crafty. It was out of his expectations. Ji Tianqing quietly left the study and used divine sense to search the situation underground. Sure enough, his divine sense penetrated through layers of defenses and camouflage, discovering that there was an underground palace underground. The underground palace only had 1 floor, but it was as large as the palace above ground. There were hundreds of large and small rooms, able to accommodate several thousand people. Ji Tianqing slightly spent some thought and methods and found the entrance to the underground palace, and successfully opened it, quietly sneaking into the underground palace. Currently, in the underground palace, there were 500 high-level Divine Lord guards guarding the various passageways and doors. Another 30-plus Divine King powerhouses were currently gathered in a relatively spacious secret chamber. From the layout of that secret chamber, it should be the underground palace's conference area. Not only was the arrangement very solemn, there were also layers of defensive array formations. Ji Tianqing groped his way to the outside of the secret chamber, casting a divine ability secret art, and quietly probing the situation inside. The situation was just as he expected. The 37 Divine King powerhouses in the room were currently discussing countermeasures and action plans. Everyone had their own opinions, and even had disagreements, being somewhat noisy. Those Divine King powerhouses were stronger. Among them, there were 20-plus middle-level Divine Kings, and more than a dozen high-level Divine Kings. As for that red-haired man sitting at the main seat, he was actually a peak Divine King realm strength. That red-haired man's build was tall and sturdy like a bull. His entire body emitted intense killing intent. He sat at the main seat expressionlessly, looking at the many generals and star-lords arguing with cold eyes. His brows were knitted together, clearly somewhat displeased in his heart. Seeing everyone argue for a long time without coming to a conclusion, he suddenly slammed the table. Boom! Following a muffled explosion, the Divine Kings who were arguing incessantly jumped in fright, all quieting down. Everyone kept quiet out of fear and lowered their heads, waiting for the red-haired man to make a decision. The red-haired man said in a low voice, "Everyone, with the current situation, who would dare to attack Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace other than the Kenshin?" What was there to argue about? Was it even worth everyone's guesses and deductions? Don't forget, since I've decided to stay, it's because I want to have a showdown with Kenshin. Right now, all of the soldiers in Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace have sworn an oath to me. All of you must advance and retreat with me, live and die together, and never shrink back. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. When it was time to reap the benefits, all of them volunteered and were enthusiastic. Now that the Kenshin is finally here, you're making excuses to avoid the battle. Let me tell you, no way. If anyone dares to run away before the battle, I will be the first to not let him off. Clearly, the red-haired man was the domain master of the heavenly phoenix Starfield, the seven slaughter god king. His fierce roar caused all the god kings to turn pale, and they groaned inwardly. Indeed, when the seven slaughter god king gathered everyone at Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace a few years ago, no one knew what was going on. At that time, they didn't know what was going on in the god realm, and they didn't know that Kenshin was coming. They only knew that the seven slaughter god king gave them extremely generous treatment and promised everyone generous conditions, which made them extremely tempted. But when they led the elite soldiers into Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace, they gradually learned the truth. From then on, many people retreated and wanted to withdraw from the battle. Everyone was certain that fighting against the sword god wasn't bravery, but stupidity and courting death. But what was done could not be undone. There was no turning back. The seven slaughter god king sealed off Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace, not allowing anyone to enter or leave. The soldiers didn't dare to think of escaping. They understood the seven slaughter god king's nature and knew that he was a master who killed without batting an eye. Who would dare to challenge him? Everyone could only endure and pray silently, hoping that Kenshin would not come to Heaven Phoenix Starfield. However, the thing that everyone didn't want to see the most finally happened. Actually, everyone knew that to be able to destroy the defensive array so suddenly, it had to be a peak god king elite, and it was very likely that Kenshin had come. But they couldn't just say that Kenshin had come and foolishly pick up their weapons to besiege Kenshin. They all had a tacit understanding and pretended not to know what was going on. They even pretended to argue and speculate about who was so audacious to actually dare to attack Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace. They decided to wait and see, waiting for the guards to investigate the situation before coming to a conclusion and discussing countermeasures. But while it was true that the seven slaughter god king had a fiery temper and was boorish, it didn't mean that he was a fool. Of course, he could see where the problem was and mercilessly exposed it in front of everyone, not giving them a chance to buy time. Cut the crap. If you don't want to die, then perk up your ears and listen. The seven slaughter god king successfully intimidated everyone and directly issued orders, sending out the various god king elites in the secret chamber to lead the soldiers to carry out various missions. Those god king elites who were named could only brace themselves and obey orders, leaving the secret chamber one by one to carry out the missions. Taking advantage of the time when the seven slaughter god king was calling out names and assigning missions, Ji Tianqing quietly sneaked into the secret chamber. Anyway, the secret chamber's door was open and the defensive array also opened up the passageway. He concealed his whereabouts and tried his best to conceal his aura. Even if he brushed past those god king elites, he was not discovered by anyone. As for the seven slaughter god king, it was very likely that he detected his presence. But the seven slaughter god king was in a fit of anger and was thinking about the problem, so he gave orders to the god kings and distracted his attention. He also would not have thought that Kenshin had already arrived in front of him. 100 breaths later, the seven slaughter god king assigned missions to the 34 god king elites. There was only him and 2 old men left in the secret chamber. These 2 old men were 7th stage realm god kings and were his left and right protectors. Go, follow this seat to hold the line. Prepare to face the Kenshin. The seven slaughter god king tidied up his armor and cape, drew his battle saber and hung it on his waist, and was about to bring the 2 protectors to hold down the fort and command. However, right at this time, a strange change suddenly occurred. Swoosh! Inside the quiet secret chamber, a large expanse of divine light suddenly emitted, enveloping the entire secret chamber with a thunderous momentum. The dazzling 5-color divine light swiftly condensed into an enormous shield, sealing the entire secret chamber. The people outside the secret chamber, no matter what method they used or what divine ability they executed, they were unable to probe the situation inside the secret chamber. In fact, if those god kings outside were not attentive, they would even think that the secret chamber's defensive array was reactivated. The secret chamber was instantly sealed. The 7 Slaughter God King and the 2 protectors all subconsciously took a step back, wielding their sabers and Kenshin weapons. Chapter 43-87. It was no wonder that the 7 Slayer King and the 2 protectors reacted so violently. They were not calm enough. It was because the 5-colored light shield had appeared too suddenly and caught them off guard. Especially at this critical moment when the sword god was about to attack. Everyone's nerves were tense. It was understandable that the 3 of them would react so violently. However, the 3 of them calmed down immediately. They spread out into a triangular formation and were ready to unleash their full power. However, they searched the entire secret chamber and did not find anyone else. The 7 Slayer King was strong enough. He vaguely sensed an unusual aura and his expression changed immediately. He gripped his dark purple battle saber tightly and stared at where Ji Tianqing was standing. He asked in a low and hoarse voice, "Sword God? It's you. It must be you." In fact, the 7 Slayer King could not confirm Kenshin's identity before Kenshin showed up. However, the other party could easily break the supreme-grade king-level divine formation at the entrance of the mystic realm and sneak into the secret chamber silently. Even if he was standing right in front of him, he could not detect him. This proved that the other party's strength was far beyond the peak godly king realm. Under such circumstances, there could not be a second person other than Kenshin. No matter how confident the 7 Slayer King was before, he looked heroic and hot-blooded. Now that he was about to face Kenshin, he still lacked confidence. His palms were sweating as he held the battle saber. The 3 of them thought that Kenshin would show up in the next moment and announce arrogantly that they could surrender. Or perhaps, the sword god did not show himself and directly used his ultimate skill to attack them. However, the 3 of them did not expect that Kenshin's ultimate skill was not enough to seal the secret chamber. He even took out another divine artifact. Swoosh! A pitch-black divine pagoda appeared out of thin air and sealed the entire secret chamber again, enveloping the 7 Slayer King and the 2 protectors. The 3 of them were in a pitch-black space, suppressed by an invisible force. Even moving became difficult. The 7 Slayer King could barely hold on. The left and right protectors were almost paralyzed and could not move, let alone fight. This was the power of a king-grade divine artifact. Only then did a white figure appear in the darkness. Even though this scene could easily make one think of some terrifying scenes. However, the white-robed young man was too handsome and majestic. His entire body exuded a sacred and majestic aura, as if he was the embodiment of heaven and earth. Such a scene was not eerie or strange at all. Instead, it made the 3 god kings of 7 Slaughter feel as if they were in a dark abyss. However, the dazzling sun above their heads made them unable to open their eyes. Without a doubt, the moment Ji Tianqing appeared, his aura completely crushed the 7 Slaughter Divine Kings trio. The left and right protectors, in particular, were already hunched over and sweating profusely. Their hearts were filled with fear and panic. The 7 Slaughter God King looked up at Ji Tianqing and narrowed his eyes. His pupils constricted as he growled in a low voice, "Kenshin, it really is you." For some reason, after a moment of fear and worry, the God King of 7 Kills actually felt a sense of relief. It was probably because in the past few years, he had always been in a state of worry, vigilance, unable to relax. Now that he finally saw Kenshin with his own eyes and confirmed that Kenshin was attacking, he no longer had to be on tenterhooks. Ji Tianqing looked down at the God King of 7 Kills from above. His expression was indifferent as he asked calmly, God King of 7 Kills, I believe you also know that Pan Rua's incarnation was destroyed and that God King Chi Xia escaped from the God realm. I'm just curious. You clearly know that you're not my match and have 10 years to prepare. Why didn't you lead the soldiers and escape? I believe you're already mentally prepared and know that you'll definitely die if you stay. Although what Ji Tianqing said was the truth, it was also what the God King of 7 Kills thought. However, in front of Kenshin, the God King of 7 Kills did not want to appear weak and be suppressed by the other party. He laughed coldly and said in a disdainful tone, Kenshin, even if the rumors in the God realm say that you're extremely powerful, I don't believe them. Now that I've seen you today, your strength may not be that strong, but your tone is unusually arrogant. You're not the invincible God Emperor, what's there to be undefeatable about? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and stared at the God King of 7 Kills carefully. Suddenly, he revealed a trace of an inexplicable smile. You have prejudices against me? The God King of 7 Kills' pupils shrank, but did not reveal any abnormal expression. He asked expressionlessly, how do you know? Ji Tianqing became more and more certain of his guess. He laughed coldly and said, Pan Ruo was once hailed as the #1 beauty in the God realm. She was the most noble and elegant, and was admired by millions of people. You're also one of Pan Ruo's admirers. That's why you're so loyal after being defeated and subdued by her. Hearing this, the God King of 7 Kills snorted coldly but did not refute. There was no helping it. There were many people who knew about this. It was useless for him to deny it. Ji Tianqing continued, but everyone knows that the only man Pan Ruo admires and loves is me. In this world, I'm the only one who can catch her eye. That's why you see me as a love rival and have a lot of enmity against me. This time, you knew that I would come, but you still stayed in the heavenly phoenix starfield. You want to do your best to fight with me. You're gambling. You're gambling that you can defeat me or even kill me after you're fully prepared. In this way, you can prove that you're more outstanding than me and more worthy of Pan Ruo. Ji Tianqing's tone was very casual, but there was an unquestionable dignity in it. Obviously, he was very confident in his judgment. In fact, he guessed correctly. This was indeed the God King of 7 Kills' true thoughts. It was also one of the reasons why he decided to stay in the heavenly phoenix starfield. The God King of 7 Kills still did not deny it, but he could not help but retort, Kenshin, you're too arrogant and narcissistic. Who do you think you are? Pan Ruo God Emperor is the strongest empress in the world, the most unique woman. The number of admirers who pursue her is as numerous as the stars in the sky. You heartless *****, you're not worthy of Pan Ruo God Emperor at all. Moreover, you viciously destroyed her incarnation before. Do you think she still has any feelings for you? Right now, she hates you to the core. As Pan Ruo God Emperor's right-hand man, of course I have to avenge Her Majesty God Emperor. This is a matter of course. Although the God King of 7 Kills spoke righteously, Ji Tianqing could still hear some clues from his tone. These were merely explanations and excuses. The real reason was as he had said. God King of 7 Kills, although I still don't have any feelings for Pan Ruo, and I've never had any romantic thoughts, I still have to say this. With your overall strength, you're delusional to think that you can win Pan Ruo's favor. You're really delusional. If she were to fall for you, I wonder how blind she would be. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 4388. Ji Tianqing's words did not carry a single swear word, but he scolded the 7-Slayer Divine King until he was worthless. The 7-Slayer Divine King was humiliated until he was covered in cuts and bruises, angered until his entire body trembled, his entire face turned purple, his entire body surging with monstrous rage. Kenshin. You bastard, what qualifications do you have to insult this seat? Today, either you die or I perish, this seat will fight it out with you. The seven-slayer divine king roared and bellowed, the endless rage in his body already accumulated to the limit, completely erupting. Whether facing the Prajna god emperor or facing Kenshin, he would feel ashamed of his inferiority, ashamed of his inferiority. But this did not mean that he could accept Kenshin's mockery and humiliation. Even if he knew that he was in a hopeless situation, that he was not Kenshin's match, he never lacked the courage to challenge a strong enemy. Kill! The seven-slayer divine king roared at the top of his lungs, erupting with his lifetime skill, brandishing the seven-slayer battle saber, turning into a stream of light and pouncing towards Ji Tianqing. The ultimate divine ability that he unleashed with hatred, the power was incomparably terrifying. If not for being suppressed by the Nine Heavens' 10 Absolutes Pagoda, just the force and saber intent that overflowed from the battle saber would have already torn space apart. However, facing this earth-shattering attack of the seven-slayer divine king, Ji Tianqing's expression was indifferent, calm and unruffled. He did not even bring out the sword of burial of heaven. Seemingly casually raising his right hand, he blasted a punch at the seven-slayer divine king, neither too fast nor too slow. A mountain-sized dragon-elephant fist shadow appeared, carrying the power to destroy everything, instantly drowning out the seven-slayer divine king. Kaboom! Amidst a deafening loud noise, the saber light released by the seven-slayer divine king was ruthlessly crushed by the fist light, exploding into fragments all over the sky. Immediately after, the seven-slayer divine king was also struck by the peerlessly terrifying power, his divine body distorted and deformed, flying backward like a sandbag. The pitch-black space that everyone was in was the inner space of the Nine Heavens' 10 Absolutes Pagoda. It was very vast, at least 30,000 miles in radius. The God King of Seven Kills flew back for more than 2,000 miles before crashing into the darkness, letting out a pained groan. There were several dents and cracks on his armor, and his divine crown was nowhere to be seen. His red hair was scattered behind his back. Even though his divine body wasn't shattered, and he didn't lose any limbs, his internal organs were shattered, and a few of his meridians were broken. As soon as he moved, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of dirty blood. His face became as pale as paper, and his aura became much weaker. Ji Tianqing had only casually executed a divine ability, and he had been severely injured. The difference in strength between the two of them was so great that it was clear at a glance. No matter how stubborn the God King of Seven Kills was, no matter how unconvinced he was now trembling with fear and had completely lost his confidence. He subconsciously raised his head and looked into the depths of the darkness. When he saw that his most trusted left and right protectors were still limp on the ground, looking timid, he was instantly furious. Bastard! You two cowards, why didn't you attack with me? The God King of Seven Kills naturally understood that even if the left and right protectors attacked Kenshin, it wouldn't be of much use. With the left and right protectors' strength, even if Kenshin only took a beating and didn't retaliate, he wouldn't be injured by them. However, the God King of Seven Kills was furious. He was angry that the left and right protectors were so cowardly that they didn't obey his orders and attack with him. This was disloyalty to him. How could he tolerate it? The left and right protectors also felt very wronged after being scolded by the God King of Seven Kills. The left protector hurriedly refuted, "It's not that we don't want to attack. It's just that Kenshin is too strong. We've been suppressed and can't move at all." The right protector shouted directly, "Lord Kenshin's strength and methods are definitely not something we can contend with. Even you were severely injured in one move. Even if we attack, it's useless. I've already said that there's no need for us to go against Lord Kenshin. We can just surrender. With Lord Kenshin's magnanimity, he definitely won't make things difficult for us. God King of Seven Kills, don't be so stubborn. Hurry up and surrender." Listen, is this something a human would say? The God King of Seven Kills couldn't believe his ears. He couldn't believe that the right protector, who had been very loyal and brave in the past, would say such shameless words. When he came back to his senses, he was completely enraged. He started to curse the right protector hysterically. Li Hong, you shameless old man. You're a bastard who betrays his master for glory. You're worse than a dog or a pig. The right protector wasn't angry, nor was he affected by the God King of Seven Kills' words. He bowed decisively to Ji Tianqing and said sincerely, Lord Kenshin, please understand. I've never thought of going against you, let alone attacking you. More than 1,100 years ago, when I was still in the realm of the gods, I was already full of respect and admiration for you. This time, the God King of Seven Kills was possessed and insisted on fighting to the death with you. I've also thought of ways to persuade him to surrender and pledge his loyalty to you. However, my words carry little weight, and the God King of Seven Kills didn't listen to my advice. I'm also very helpless. However, this doesn't affect my respect for you. I'll now announce that I'm surrendering, and I'll be at your disposal. The right protector's words were very smooth, and he didn't pause at all. His emotions were very sincere, and he didn't seem to be lying at all. The God King of Seven Kills was so angry that his whole body trembled, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The left protector was also stunned. He looked at the right protector in disbelief, as if he couldn't believe that his old companion would be so shameless. Even Ji Tianqing was a little surprised. The right protector's skin was so thick that it made him blush with shame. Of course, under such circumstances, he couldn't reject the right protector's sincere surrender. After all, the right protector was the first to surrender, and he had also set an example. Yes, a wise man submits to circumstances. You're very smart, and I accept your surrender. Retreat to the side and wait. I'll deal with you after I've dealt with the God King of Seven Kills. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly, indicating that he accepted the right protector's surrender, and waved his hand to signal him to retreat. The right protector bowed respectfully, then turned around and retreated to a corner of the dark space. Of course, before he left, he didn't forget to give the left protector a look. The meaning was quite obvious. It was to remind the left protector that since things had come to this, it was more important to save his life. He must not take things too hard and be buried with the God King of Seven Kills. The left protector was stunned for a moment. With the tacit understanding he had with the right protector for thousands of years, he immediately understood the other party's meaning. Therefore, before Ji Tianqing could say anything, and before the God King of Seven Kills could curse angrily, he hurriedly bowed and saluted. Lord Kenshin, I've been best friends with the right protector for 8,000 years. We've always been as close as brothers, and we advance and retreat together. What he said just now is also what I'm thinking. From the beginning to the end, I've never thought of being your enemy. You're the embodiment of justice, the messenger of the heavenly axiom. Whether you unify the God realm or subdue the heavenly Phoenix galaxy, you're following the will of heaven. I definitely won't do anything that goes against heaven's will. I'm willing to surrender to you and be at your beck and call, and serve you faithfully. Chapter 43-89. The left protector had also surrendered. The right protector had already said all the nice things, so he could only add a few more sentences on top of what the right protector had said to express his sincerity. Although it didn't sound very touching, he had already expressed his intention clearly. Ji Tianqing knew what these two old fellows were thinking, so he couldn't be bothered to argue with them. He waved his hand and signaled for the left protector to retreat and wait. Seeing his reaction, the left protector understood that Kenshin had accepted his surrender. He couldn't help but be secretly delighted and quickly retreated to the side. He and the right protector retreated to a dark corner. Their hearts were at ease as they watched the battle leisurely. This scene enraged the Seven Slayer King so much that his red hair stood on end. Flames rose from his body, and blood spurted out of his mouth and nose. Over 3,000 years ago, when he was still in the God realm and was still the Nantian Lord of the Chaotic Mainland, the left and right protectors had joined him and became his trusted aides. In these 3,000 years, he thought that he understood the nature of the left and right protectors very well. He also thought highly of them and trusted them very much. In all honesty, he had never mistreated the left and right protectors. However, he didn't expect that the left and right protectors, whom he thought were very loyal, would betray him without hesitation at the most critical moment. When facing Kenshin, the left and right protectors' servile attitude made the Seven-Slayer King feel extremely humiliated and angry. Kenshin had once again made him feel a deep sense of defeat. Compared to Kenshin, he hated the left and right protectors who betrayed him even more. He couldn't wait to chop the two protectors into pieces and feed them to the dogs. However, he could only think about it. In front of Kenshin, he no longer had the chance to casually attack. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and appeared in front of the Seven-Slayer King. He looked down at him indifferently and said, "With your nature, I believe that you're an unyielding man. You definitely won't admit defeat and surrender, right?" In fact, God King 7 Kills also knew that he would lose without a doubt. There was probably no way he could survive. The thought of surrendering had once crossed his mind, thinking that perhaps the Kenshin would spare his life. However, the thought only flashed in his mind, and he quickly rejected it. He couldn't get over the hurdle in his heart, nor could he let go of his dignity. More importantly, he felt that even if he surrendered, Kenshin might not let him go. Now, Kenshin's words confirmed his guess. At that moment, God King 7 Kills was stunned for a moment as he felt a sense of loss and despair in his heart. In the dark corner, the left and right guardians looked at each other with a hint of surprise in their eyes. According to the information they received, Kenshin rarely killed the generals, domain lords, and rulers of the God Realm when he was conquering the God Realm. As long as those in power were willing to surrender and pledge their loyalty, the Kenshin would forgive them and allow them to continue to hold power and serve him. Therefore, the left and right protectors thought that if God King 7 Kills surrendered and pledged his loyalty, Kenshin would most likely spare his life. However, they guessed wrong. Kenshin was determined to get rid of God King 7 Kills. However, on second thought, the left and right protectors felt that it was actually good for Kenshin to kill God King 7 Kills. If God King 7 Kills survived and continued to hold power, who knew how he would take revenge on them in the future? The current outcome was pretty good. When Kenshin got rid of God King 7 Kills, the two of them would have a chance to take the next step and hold power. At that moment, God King 7 Kills seemed to have accepted his fate. Since Kenshin was unwilling to let him go, there was no need for him to plead for mercy, much less surrender. Not only would that be useless, but it would also make the other party look down on him and despise him even more. Since he wanted to pretend to be a tough guy, he had to pretend to the end. Kenshin. The world fears you, but I'm not. Don't think that everyone is like those two old fogies, cowardly and shameless. Since I've decided to stay, I'm prepared to die in battle. Come. Kill me and you'll be able to prove how loyal I am to the Prajna God Emperor. I'd rather use my life to defend her dignity. Even if I die, I'll leave the heaviest mark in her memory, ha 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 ha. God King 7 Kills raised his sleeve to wipe away the blood on his face. He forcefully supported his heavily injured body and flew into the air with his saber in hand, laughing heroically. He had already thought it through. Since he was destined to die, he had to die with a bang so that the Prajna God Emperor would remember him forever. In this way, his death could be considered to have been worth it, and his death was worth it. Moreover, the Prajna God Emperor would hate Kenshin, remember his loyalty and bravery, and remember his kindness. Comparing the two, it was equivalent to him defeating Kenshin. Even if he was not as strong as Kenshin, he could still beat Kenshin in this aspect. This time, the Seven Slaughter God King still took the initiative to attack, charging towards Ji Tianqing with unparalleled valiance. Of course, he knew that this could very well be the last battle of his life. Therefore, he didn't hold anything back and used all his trump cards. Swish! Swish! As the divine light flashed, he took out 12 king-level upper-grade divine artifacts, and they circled around him. There were sabers, spears, swords, halberds, axes, hooks, and forks. There was also the bell and cauldron seal. Together, they formed a powerful set of divine weapons, which was comparable to a supreme-grade divine weapon. That was not all. The seven slaughter god king even took out a blood-red divine pill and consumed it with a resolute expression. It was a rare divine pill. Its grade was very close to the king grade, and it possessed an incomparably domineering power. It could push a god-king expert's bloodline and potential to the limit for a short period of time, erupting with 8 to 10 times their fighting strength. Not to mention the extraterritorial starry skies, even in the divine world, a divine pill with such overbearing effects was extremely rare. Of course, a divine pill with such overbearing effects would also have a powerful after-effect after consuming it. That was, the divine body and potential would be overly depleted, causing irreversible damage. The foundation of the divine path would also be damaged. In other words, one's strength would plummet, and it would never recover. It would be impossible for one's strength to increase again. Any god-king expert, unless they were forced into a desperate situation, would never consume such a divine pill to cut off their own path and future. The seven slaughter god king was undoubtedly forced into a desperate situation. He had no other choice. Of course, the existence of this divine pill was one of the reasons why he chose to stay in the heavenly Phoenix galaxy. He believed that his strength was not much weaker than Kenshin's. They were both peak god kings. If he consumed this divine pill and increased his fighting strength by 8 times, he would have a chance to defeat Kenshin. However, when he consumed this divine pill, his mood was very different from before. He didn't have much confidence in defeating Kenshin. Ji Tianqing watched as the seven slaughter god king took out a bunch of divine artifacts and consumed the divine pill. His strength skyrocketed, but he didn't stop him. Since it was the seven slaughter god king's last battle, he would give the seven slaughter god king a chance to increase his fighting strength to the limit. Only then could he convince the other party of his defeat. Chapter 4390. In just a few seconds, the seven slayer god king's appearance changed. The domineering elixir's power completely erupted in his body. His burly body began to swell, and his face became much more ferocious. His entire body was burning with bloody flames that soared into the sky. An unparalleled murderous aura and monstrous hatred erupted from his body and swept across thousands of miles. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes were scarlet. He held his saber with both hands and roared as he charged at Ji Tianqing, launching his most ferocious attack. At the same time, the 12 king-level superior-grade divine artifacts around him also burst forth with their most powerful power, attacking Ji Tianqing. At this moment, divine power surged, and murderous aura overflowed. More than a dozen divine artifacts danced in the sky, and dazzling divine light flooded thousands of miles. At the center of the storm, Ji Tianqing, who was about to be drowned by the divine artifacts and divine light, was still fearless and calm. He still did not use the sword of burial of heaven. His left hand used the dragon elephant divine fist and blasted it at the seven slayer god king. And his right hand's index and middle fingers were pressed together like a sword, stabbing at the seven slayer god king. Swoosh! A dazzling cold light bloomed and attacked the seven slayer god king. The next moment, it expanded billions of times and became a dazzling sun. Clearly, it was the daylight sword again. Rumble! The next moment, the mountain-sized dragon elephant divine fist blasted the 12 divine artifacts and drowned the seven slayer god king's figure, creating an earth-shattering sound. Immediately after, the dazzling sun filled more than half of the dark space, completely swallowing the seven slayer god king's figure. Ji Tianqing's control over his power could be said to be at the pinnacle, without the slightest error. No matter how terrifying the daylight sword's power was, no matter how powerful the aftershock of their battle was, it did not affect the left and right protectors in the dark corner. The earth-shattering sound and the surging divine power shock waves were also compressed in the dark space and did not spread out completely. After a full 10 seconds, the earth-shattering sound and violent shock waves dissipated. The bright and dazzling dark space also gradually returned to normal. At the same time, the battle between Ji Tianqing and the Seven-Slayer God King had also ended. In the quiet dark space, the left and right protectors looked at each other and stared at the empty space in front of them, their faces full of shock. They did not know the result of the battle between Kenshin and the Seven-Slayer God King. But what was certain was that the Seven-Slayer God King had disappeared. After careful observation, the two of them discovered that on the empty ground beside the God of Swords, there was a pile of scrap metal and divine weapon fragments. The left and right protectors frowned and thought for a moment. They immediately recognized that those were the 12 divine artifacts of the seven-slaying divine king, but they had all been destroyed and God King God Kings God God. To God 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 and God 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 King. Recognizing the fragments, the left and right protectors were dumbfounded. Their eyes were filled with fear. It's the Godhead shard of the Seven-Slaughter God King. He was killed by Kenshin and turned into ashes. All that's left of him are his divine spark fragments. Oh my God! The Seven-Slaughter God King went all out and even took that divine pill, increasing his battle prowess by nearly 10 times. Yet he was still insta-killed by Kenshin. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, the left and right protectors wouldn't have believed it. As far as they knew, the Seven-Slaughter God King was already a peak divine king expert. After consuming that divine pill, which increased his battle prowess by 10 times, he was already at the limit of a peak divine king. He was very close to a God Emperor expert. Logically speaking, the Seven-Slayer God King should have been able to fight Kenshin to a draw, with both sides exchanging dozens or even hundreds of blows. Kenshin would only be able to kill the Seven-Slaying God King when the effects of the drug wore off and his combat strength began to wane. But they did not expect that the result would actually be so shocking, making it hard to believe. Kenshin's might already exceeded their imaginations. He was no different from a God Emperor expert. Just as the left and right protectors were in a daze, Ji Tianqing put away the Seven-Slaying God King's divine spark fragments with a wave of his hand. As for those divine artifact fragments and the Seven-Slaying God King's spatial ring, he put them away too. The shattered and damaged divine artifacts were thrown to the heaven-mending pearl to devour by him. And inside the Seven-Slaying God King's spatial ring, there was bound to be massive amounts of cultivation resources and treasures stored inside. When he had time in the future, he would slowly count them. After putting away the spatial ring, Ji Tianqing turned around and flew toward the left and right protectors. Only then did the left and right protectors come back to their senses and hurriedly went to greet Ji Tianqing. After meeting, they immediately bowed and saluted, saying, "This subordinate pays respect to Lord Kenshin. Lord Kenshin is indeed an invincible expert. Killing the Seven-Slaying God King in an instant is as easy as flipping your hand." This subordinate is extremely impressed. In comparison, the left protector was slightly more reserved, while the right protector was more direct. Not only did he immediately switch his identity and attitude, but he also took the opportunity to flatter Ji Tianqing very smoothly without any psychological barriers. Ji Tianqing was indifferent to this and could not be bothered to talk nonsense with them. He directly took out 2 jade slips and threw them in front of them. "I'm sure you know my rules and know what to do." The legend of the Heavenly Oath had long been spread in the God realm and was widely known. When the left and right protectors heard about Kenshin, they also heard those legends and naturally understood that the jade slips in front of them contained the legendary Heavenly Oath. The two of them were stunned for a moment, not expecting Kenshin to be so straightforward. But they immediately reacted and nodded hurriedly, indicating that they were willing to swear the oath of surrender. This subordinate understands what to do. Please rest assured, Lord Kenshin. Of course, this subordinate understands Lord Kenshin's rules and has been looking forward to it for a long time. After that, the left and right protectors picked up the jade slips and read the contents with their divine senses. After reading the contents of the oath of surrender, their expressions changed immediately. Not only did their faces turn pale, but cold sweat also broke out on their foreheads. The two of them had heard that Kenshin's oath of surrender was very harsh and could be said to be terrifying. But the heavenly phoenix starfield was not as convenient as the God realm's information. The left and right protectors had limited information and did not know how harsh the heavenly oath Kenshin had made was. Now that they saw it with their own eyes, they knew that the rumors were true. It was indeed very detailed and extremely harsh. Once they said this oath of surrender, they would completely lose their freedom. They would have to be completely loyal to Kenshin, both physically and mentally. They could not even think of rebelling. As for whether they would be punished by the heavenly Tao after breaking the oath, the left and right protectors could not be sure, but they did not dare to test the law. After a moment of silence, the two of them looked at each other and revealed bitter expressions. They could only choose to accept their fate. At this point, they had already pledged their loyalty to Kenshin. How could they give up halfway? In the entire heavenly phoenix starfield, they should be the first to pledge their loyalty to Kenshin. They would definitely be treated better than the others. Thinking of this, the left and right protectors were comforted and did not resist as much. End of chapter. Chapter 4391. Very soon, 100 breaths of time passed. The left and right protectors braced themselves, endured their fear, and finished reciting the oath of surrender. The two lit up with divine light, a wisp of Tao rhyme appeared above their heads. In the depths of the dark space, earth-shaking thunder also sounded. The formless heavenly Tao's divine might passed through the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda, directly enveloping the left and right protectors, making the two deeply alarmed and fearful, involuntarily lowering their heads. The left and right protectors were still trembling under the heavenly Tao's divine might. Their reverence for Ji Tianqing deepened further in their hearts. At this time, Ji Tianqing already put away the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda. The three people appeared in the dimly lit secret chamber again. However, the surroundings were still sealed by a ring of 5-colored light barrier. The situation around the secret chamber was just as Ji Tianqing expected. It was already surrounded by divine king powerhouses wearing armor and holding weapons, as well as over 200 elite guards. If one observed carefully, they would discover that those dozen over divine king powerhouses were the ones who left under orders previously. Those 200 over divine lord realm guards were also on duty in the underground palace previously, guarding the various passageways and doors. Without a doubt, when Ji Tianqing infiltrated the secret chamber and cast a sealing array formation to trap the 7 slaying divine king and the left and right protectors, those dozen over divine kings had not gone far yet. They detected the abnormality, sensing the aura of an unfamiliar powerhouse in the secret chamber. After some hesitation, weighing the pros and cons, they made a decision on their own and did not carry out the orders. Instead, they returned to the secret chamber to check on the situation. Even if nothing unexpected happened, if the 7 slaying divine king wanted to reprimand them, they could also find an excuse. However, when they returned to the secret chamber, they discovered that the entire secret chamber was sealed by a layer of 5-colored light barrier. That 5-colored light barrier was not the secret chamber's original defensive array, but cast by a mysterious powerhouse. The dozen over divine kings realized that the situation was not good. There might be a powerhouse invading, so they hurriedly gathered over 200 guards and surrounded the entire secret chamber. They also started a discussion, speculating who infiltrated the secret chamber and cast a spell to seal the secret chamber. After screening and investigating, they confirmed that there were 3 people trapped in the secret room. They were the king of 7 slayers and the left and right protectors. Thinking about how powerful the 3 of them were, they should be able to last for a long time even if they were ambushed by experts. Only then did the God Kings relax slightly. However, many God Kings guessed that the expert who could infiltrate the room and seal it up was probably Kenshin. When they thought up to there, the God Kings all became rather uneasy. They discussed among themselves even more intensely. They had to consider that if the invaders were really the Kenshin, then they would soon have to face the Kenshin and fight them to the death. When they thought of Kenshin's powerful strength and methods, and then recalled Kenshin's legendary deeds, everyone felt a chill run down their spines, and their hearts were filled with fear and unease. Most of them did not have the courage to attack Kenshin. But they were the subordinates of the Seven Slaughter God King after all. When the Seven Slaughter God King's life was in danger, how could they sit idly by and do nothing? Just like that, the dozen or so God Kings were in a state of conflict and hesitation. Everyone seemed to be discussing on the surface, but no one did anything to break the seal. In reality, they were all waiting to see what would happen. And reality proved that these wily old God Kings had indeed made the correct choice. After they dawdled for a few minutes, the situation in the sealing array changed. The boundless darkness vanished, revealing the secret room's original appearance. Through the colorful sealing spell formation, everyone saw three figures appear in the secret chamber. One of them was a handsome black-haired young man in a white robe and two white-haired old men. Everyone knew the two elders. They were the left and right protectors by the King of Seven Slaughter's side. As for the handsome white-robed youth, he emanated an extremely powerful and divine aura. Everyone combined the rumors they had heard and the description of Kenshin. They immediately concluded that the white-robed youth was the legendary Kenshin. For a moment, the dozen or so God Kings and over 200 guards were stunned where they stood, at a loss for what to do. It really is Kenshin. Kenshin actually came. I didn't expect Kenshin to come so suddenly and mysteriously. The first time we see him is actually here. Under such circumstances, Kenshin actually snuck into the secret room without a sound, hiding from all of us. How did he do it? Why are the left and right protectors following behind Kenshin? Where's His Majesty? Why is he nowhere to be seen? What happened in there earlier? What did Kenshin do to His Majesty? These thoughts flashed through the minds of the many God King and Divine Lord guards. They were filled with doubts and anxiety. However, no one was foolish enough to question Kenshin. No one was foolish enough to brandish their weapons and interrogate Kenshin about what he did to the Seven Slaughter God King. Against this legendary expert, no one present had the courage to attack. In the end, it was Kenshin who took the initiative to remove the five-colored seal array formation and led the left and right protectors out of the secret room. When he came to the spacious hall outside the secret room, the dozen or so God Kings and over 200 guards subconsciously retreated, keeping a distance from him. Ji Tianqing did not waste any time and said directly, I have already killed the Seven Slaughter God King, and the left and right protectors have already pledged their loyalty to me. Tell all the soldiers of Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace that they only have two choices. Either submit or die. Ji Tianqing's 3 sentences were not only an ultimatum to the 200 people in the hall, but also to all the soldiers of Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. After learning that the Seven Slaughter God King had already been killed, the 200 or so people present were stunned. Their eyes widened as they revealed expressions of disbelief. This sudden news was too shocking and caught them off guard. But these words came from Kenshin's mouth, so everyone had no choice but to believe it. Of course, there were also many God Kings who were half believing and half doubting. They could not resist looking at the left and right protectors, asking them for an answer. The left and right protectors were also very smart. They knew that this was an opportunity for them to perform and immediately stepped forward to speak. That's right. We saw it with our own eyes. The Seven Slaughter God King was easily insta-killed by Lord Kenshin, turned into ashes, and not even his bones remained. Comrades, don't make a mistake. Quickly surrender and pledge your loyalty to Lord Kenshin. The 7 Slaughter God King refused to realize his error and has already fallen. I believe everyone also knows that Lord Kenshin is the embodiment of justice, the messenger of heavenly Tao. He will absolutely not kill the innocent. As long as everyone immediately surrenders and pledges your loyalty to Lord Kenshin, you will be spared from death and be safe. The 2 protectors' words proved that the 7 Slaughter God King had fallen. The 200 or so people present could only forcefully suppress their shock and accept this reality. Some God King powerhouses with quicker reactions and clever minds saw through the clues from the attitude of the left and right protectors. They also immediately put away their weapons and bowed to Ji Tianqing, indicating that they admitted defeat and surrendered. After obtaining Ji Tianqing's nod of approval, they hurriedly sent out messages, informing the many soldiers under their command to return to Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace's plaza and pledge their loyalty to Kenshin. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 4392. With the clever godly kings taking the lead, the remaining godly kings who were at a loss immediately followed suit. Although the God King of 7 kills was killed, they could unite and gather 30,000 soldiers to besiege the Sword God. If they didn't want to be leaderless, they could also nominate a few experts to take charge of the situation. With so many people, even if they couldn't defeat Kenshin, they could at least cause trouble for Kenshin. However, everyone felt that it was meaningless to do so. They stayed behind to defend Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace and resist Kenshin because they were forced by the 7 Slayer King and were unwilling to do so. Since the 7 Slayer King was dead and the left and right protectors had submitted to Kenshin, no one would force them to deal with Kenshin anymore. Under such circumstances, who would go against Kenshin? Wouldn't that be courting death? Of course, they would quickly admit defeat and surrender. Saving their lives was more important. In a short while, more than a dozen godly kings and more than 200 guards in the main hall surrendered and pledged their loyalty to Ji Tianqing. There was no proof. Words didn't count. Ji Tianqing directly waved his palm and shot out a white light, revealing hundreds of densely packed golden words. He asked everyone to read them out loud. Without a doubt, those hundreds of words were the contents of the pledge of surrender. More than 200 people looked up at the white light screen and stared at the pledge of surrender on it. Their faces were pale and their scalps were numb. However, they had already pledged their loyalty. They couldn't go back on their words. Kenshin was right in front of them. Anyone who dared to go back on their words would be tired of living. Left with no choice, the dozen godly kings and more than 200 guards could only obediently recite the pledge of surrender. They didn't even dare to think of cheating. The sword god's strength was valiant and his methods were heaven-defying. This was something everyone knew. Kenshin was cold and ruthless and killed people like flies. This was also a rumor in the pugilistic world. No one was willing to use their own life to test whether the sword god was truly vicious and merciless. Soon, the voices of people reciting the pledge in unison rang out, converging into a dull sound wave that reverberated in the main hall. 15 minutes later, everyone recited the oath of surrender. Their bodies emitted divine light, and Taoist rhymes appeared above their heads. In the sky above the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace, dense thunderbolts also appeared, emitting deafening thunder and roars. The invisible heavenly might enveloped the 200 people in the hall, causing all of them to tremble with fear. Even the dozen or so god kings were no exception. At this time, more than 20,000 soldiers guarding Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace were already in position, ready to fight. Seeing the scene of lightning and thunder in the sky, as well as the formless, vast heavenly might descending, many of the soldiers panicked, whispering to each other as they discussed the situation. There were even many God King generals who did not know what was going on. They hurriedly entered the underground palace to report to God King 7 Slaughter. The result was obvious. More than 20 divine king generals and star lords saw a strange scene after they rushed into the palace. Over a dozen God King powerhouses and over 200 elite guards stood in the hall with reverent expressions. The left and right protectors stood behind a young man in a white robe with a respectful attitude. Before the generals and Star Lords could figure out what was going on, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and closed the door of the hall. Then, the left and right protectors introduced Ji Tianqing to the generals and told them about the fate of God King 7 slaughter, and persuaded them to surrender and pledge their loyalty. The generals and Star Lords were all stunned and did not know what to do. They looked at each other. No one would have thought that their war with Kenshin would end before it even started. God King 7 slaughter had not even shown up, but Kenshin had already finished him off. They had just rushed into the underground palace and did not know the specific battle plan, but they were already forced to surrender and pledge their loyalty. This was simply too dramatic, too absurd. After coming back to their senses, some of the generals and Star Lords instinctively wanted to run away from this dangerous place, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. But they found in despair that the entrance to the underground palace was closed. It would be very difficult for them to open the entrance in a few hours with their strength. Besides, Kenshin was still watching them from the hall. There was no way he would give them a chance to crack the array at the entrance. The other generals and Star Lords, on the other hand, were relatively calm. They thought for a moment and came up with a countermeasure. Since the left and right protectors and the dozen God Kings had surrendered, and God King 7 slaughter was dead, there was no need for them to remain foolishly loyal anymore. As the saying went, a wise man submits to circumstances. Only by following the wind can one live a long life. Those generals and Star Lords had no time to care about dignity and integrity. They immediately surrendered to Ji Tianqing and pledged their loyalty. Led by them, the other generals and Star Lords could only submit obediently. Just like that, Ji Tianqing effortlessly subdued over 20 God Kings just by relying on the pressure of the general situation. The 20 or so generals and Star Lords finished the oath of surrender uneasily and fearfully under the watchful eyes of more than 200 people. Then, they were also enveloped by divine light, and a wisp of Taoist rhyme appeared above their heads. Above the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace, another dazzling flash of lightning lit up, and a deafening roar of thunder resounded. The 20,000 soldiers guarding Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace saw that the lightning had just dissipated, and now there was a large amount of lightning again. There was also an invisible power of heaven, which made them feel uneasy. In addition, the dozens of God King generals and Star Lords had disappeared, and God King 7 slaughter had not appeared for a long time. This made the soldiers panic, and the morale of the army was completely disrupted. The soldiers were no longer in the mood to defend. They were all discussing and guessing what had happened. Not to mention the ordinary Divine Lord guards, even the God King experts and Star Lords were confused and worried. There were also people who tried to enter the Divine Palace and break into the underground palace to send messages. But the entrance to the underground palace was closed, so they could only return without success. Time passed quietly. Unknowingly, another 15 minutes had passed. At this time, 10 teams received orders from their leaders to gather at the square of Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace. There were more than 18,000 Divine Lord experts in these 10 teams, and they came from different planets and forces. The order they received was to gather at the square and wait for the arrival of their leaders. There was no other information. This caused the 18,000 soldiers to be dumbfounded. There were still 10,000 soldiers guarding Heaven Phoenix Divine Palace. They were all direct subordinates of God King 7 slaughter, and they were also confused by this scene. About 15 minutes later, more than 200 elite guards, 40 God King generals, and Star Lords escorted Ji Tianqing out of the underground palace and into the spacious square outside the palace. Swish! 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 The 300 people flew into the sky above the plaza in such a grand manner, overlooking the entire Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace and the 20,000 soldiers within a few hundred kilometers of it. Even though he was surrounded by 300 people, Ji Tianqing was still so dazzling that he could always attract everyone's attention. When they saw his appearance, the 20,000 soldiers were all dumbfounded. They were all stunned and in disbelief. Chapter 43-93. The 20,000 soldiers in Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace had never seen Kenshin with their own eyes. However, they had heard of Kenshin's legendary deeds and descriptions of Kenshin's appearance. The white-robed youth in front of them had black hair and black eyes. He was handsome and had the most special and sacred aura. He was like the embodiment of the heavenly Tao. Other than the 5 god emperors, only Kenshin deserved to have such an aura. Therefore, the white-robed youth's identity was obvious. There was no doubt about it. However, the soldiers couldn't understand and couldn't believe their eyes. It wasn't surprising that Kenshin would attack Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace, but Kenshin had just broken through the entrance of the secret realm. How could he appear inside Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace with dozens of God King generals and Star Masters? Could it be that those divine generals and Star Lords had all betrayed the 7 Slayers and pledged their loyalty to the Sword God? What was even more unbelievable was that the left and right protectors were the most loyal to 7 Slayer. They were his absolute confidants. They didn't expect them to betray 7 Slayer and follow Kenshin respectfully. This was ridiculous. The soldiers were so shocked that they couldn't recover for a while. However, the left and right protectors and dozens of god generals and star masters took the opportunity to show their power and prestige. They took the initiative to speak up. Everyone, listen up. Lord Kenshin has come to Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace to represent the Heavenly Tao and Justice. He will take over Heavenly Phoenix Starfield, restore freedom to all citizens, and restore peace to the entire Starfield. The chief culprit who had ruled and oppressed the Heavenly Phoenix Star Zone, the 7 Slaughter God King, had been killed by the Sword God. If anyone dares to stop Lord Kenshin from unifying Heavenly Phoenix Starfield and destroying peace, they will be the public enemy and sinner of the entire Starfield. Everyone present here only has 2 choices. Either you surrender to Lord Sword God and swear loyalty to him, or you'll be eliminated by us. The words of the left and right protectors were equivalent to declaring their position. First, they would put the King of 7 Slayers on the pillar of shame for his heinous crimes and elevate Kenshin as the savior of the Heavenly Phoenix sector. Secondly, it would show that they were loyal to the Kenshin and were willing to share the Kenshin's burden, even if they had to kill their former subordinates. After the left and right protectors finished, the divine generals and star lords hurriedly ordered their soldiers to put away their weapons and armor and surrender to Kenshin. More than 20,000 soldiers were still in a daze. It was very difficult for them to adapt to the change in status and situation in such a short time. However, the 18,000 soldiers of the dozen or so troops had become accustomed to their leaders' orders and subconsciously obeyed them. The dozen or so teams put away their weapons and armor in unison and bowed to Ji Tianqing. They shouted in unison that they paid their respects to the Sword God and that they were willing to admit defeat and surrender. Seeing that these soldiers were well trained, Ji Tianqing nodded slightly, indicating that he was willing to accept their allegiance. In this way, the 18,000 soldiers surrendered to the Kenshin and stood in the square, waiting for orders. The remaining 10,000 soldiers were the direct subordinates of the King of 7 Slayers. They were now scattered all over the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace, guarding many passages and formations. Their situation suddenly became awkward. Everyone's eyes were focused on them. It was understandable that the 18,000 soldiers had surrendered. After all, they came from various planets and forces. They were not very loyal to the King of 7 Slayers. They were more loyal to their leader. However, the 10,000 soldiers guarding the vital points of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace were the direct subordinates of the King of 7 Slayers. They should be loyal and devoted to the King of 7 Slayers. The others could take advantage of the situation and surrender on the spot without any integrity, but they could not. At the very least, they had to demonstrate their loyalty to the King of Seven Slayers, show their courage and integrity, and symbolically resist before being subdued by Kenshin. This was more reasonable. However, the problem was, who would take the lead to demonstrate the soldiers' loyalty and courage? Who would lead everyone to resist Kenshin's call to surrender? Everyone knew that the hunter would shoot the bird that sticks out. What the sword god needed was the allegiance and loyalty of the soldiers. Only then would he care about the integrity and dignity of the soldiers. If anyone dared to take the lead to stir up trouble or oppose the surrender, they would definitely be targeted by the Kenshin and killed on the spot. In fact, Kenshin did not even need to do anything. The left and right protectors and the 40 God King experts were still worried that they could not find an opportunity to show off. None of the God King experts leading the 10,000 soldiers were hot-blooded fools who were willing to sacrifice themselves to demonstrate everyone's loyalty and integrity. As a result, the scene became even more silent and awkward. The officers and soldiers looked at each other, but none of them could make up their minds. No one took the initiative to surrender to the Kenshin, and no one took the lead to resist the Kenshin's call to surrender. Everyone was watching, waiting for someone who was not afraid of death to step forward and set an example. The left and right protectors couldn't help but frown when they saw the awkward and subtle atmosphere. The two of them were the right-hand men of the God King of Seven Kills, and the 10,000 soldiers were his direct subordinates. In other words, the 10,000 soldiers were also under their control and were under their command. As a result, the left and right protectors planned to step forward and reprimand the 10,000 soldiers and persuade them to surrender again. However, they did not expect that at this moment, a figure would step forward and stand in front of the 10,000 soldiers. It was a middle-aged man dressed in a sapphire blue robe with a gentle and refined appearance. He was not a member of the god realm, but a native of the heavenly Phoenix planet, a foreign god with brown hair and blue eyes. His attire made him look like a divine general among the 10,000 soldiers, and he was in charge of around 2,000 to 3,000 guards. However, he was a 7th-level god king, and his dignified bearing was similar to that of most Star Lords. It was obvious that this blue-robed man was not just a divine general. Facing the 10,000 soldiers, he said with a solemn expression and a dignified tone, "My colleagues, the seven-killing God King has been carrying out a cruel and vicious tyranny in the past few years, endlessly oppressing and enslaving the common people. As a result, the gods of the entire heavenly Phoenix planet are in deep water and hot fire. These things are obvious to all. The crimes committed by the God King of Seven Kills are innumerable, and I believe everyone is well aware of them. Now, Lord Kenshin, who represents the heavenly Tao and justice, has come to speak on behalf of Tianqing and eradicate the evil God King of Seven Kills. This is a righteous act. As God monarchs and God kings, you are the cream of the crop among the billions of gods. You should know better. At this juncture, shouldn't we welcome Lord Kenshin with open arms and celebrate the death of the God King of Seven Kills? The other brothers have already come to their senses and have forsaken the darkness for the light, pledging loyalty to Lord Kenshin. What are we waiting for? Are we going to die with the God King of Seven Kills for meaningless dignity and laughable loyalty? Chapter 43-94. The blue-robed man's words echoed the thoughts of many soldiers. In fact, everyone knew that the Seven-Slayer King was violent, cruel, and bloodthirsty. In the 1,000 years that the Seven-Slayer King had ruled the heavenly Phoenix star field, he had committed many crimes and killed many immortals directly and indirectly. However, the words of the soldiers carried little weight. They could only follow orders and could not change anything. Over time, over the years, they had gotten used to it and were numb to it. At this moment, they were enlightened by the blue-robed man's words. That's right, the Seven-Slayer King was not a wise ruler but a violent and cruel ruler. Since the Seven-Slayer King had been killed by Kenshin, what else could they hold on to? What was there to hesitate about? Therefore, many people put down the grudges in their hearts and no longer cared about integrity and dignity. Under the leadership of the blue-robed man, they all surrendered and pledged their loyalty to Ji Tianqing. Of course, what convinced and enlightened the 10,000 soldiers was not only the blue-robed man's words. More importantly, it was the blue-robed man's identity. All the soldiers present knew him. He was the heavenly Phoenix Star Master from more than 1,000 years ago, the ruler of this star. The Seven Slayer King seized his territory and demoted him to an ordinary general. He led 3,000 guards and guarded the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace day and night. He was once the master of the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace and also its creator. As a result, in the past 1,000 years, he had become a guard of the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. How humiliating was this? In the first 200 to 300 years, the heavenly Phoenix Star Master was often mentioned and became the target of ridicule. However, the heavenly Phoenix Star Master endured the humiliation and never showed any anger. It was as if he did not care about what others thought. For 1,000 years, he had always been cautious and carried out his orders dutifully. He served the Seven Slayer King and made the Seven Slayer King let down his guard. It was only today that everyone present understood that the heavenly Phoenix Star Master had endured until now because he was waiting for a chance to turn the tables. Kenshin had come. The Seven Slayer King had been killed. His chance to turn the tables had arrived. Those 10,000 soldiers were willing to listen to him not only because he was once the heavenly Phoenix Star Master, but also because many of them were once his subordinates. It was also because he had been secretly and subtly cultivating his trusted subordinates and building a team of forces for the past 1,000 years. At least half of the 10,000 soldiers under the direct command of the Seven Slaughter God King respected and trusted the heavenly Phoenix Star Master. Seeing that the heavenly Phoenix Astral Master had convinced the 10,000 soldiers with just a few words, and even led the soldiers to salute and surrender, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with a hint of admiration. Without a doubt, the heavenly Phoenix Star Master's patience far surpassed ordinary people. Her thoughts and shrewdness were also very profound. Most importantly, this person knew how to find an opportunity to strike decisively. It was no wonder that such a person could rule the heavenly Phoenix planet for so many years. If he had not encountered the Seven Slaughter God King who had the support of the Prajna God Emperor, perhaps he could have continued to rule the heavenly Phoenix planet without any problems. In comparison, the heavenly Phoenix Star Master's talents and methods were much more brilliant than the left and right protectors. After the 10,000 soldiers saluted, Ji Tianqing's gaze fell on the heavenly Phoenix Star Master. He opened his mouth and asked, "You are the former heavenly Phoenix Star Master?" The heavenly Phoenix Star Master hurriedly bowed and replied respectfully, reporting to Lord Kenshin, "I am. However, for the past 1,000 years, I have only been an ordinary guard commander in the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a calm expression, "Come here and wait beside me." Those who could stand beside him at this moment were all divine kings who had sworn loyalty to him. Someone like the heavenly Phoenix Star Master, who had yet to swear an oath of allegiance, could still stand beside him. She was truly the first. This was enough to prove that he admired and affirmed the heavenly Phoenix Star Master. The left and right protectors and many divine king powerhouses all understood this point. The way they looked at the heavenly Phoenix Star Master changed and was filled with envy and jealousy. The heavenly Phoenix Star Master was also secretly shocked and surprised. She was a little agitated and her heartbeat accelerated. However, she did not lose her composure. She still maintained her composure and calmness. She walked in front of Kenshin at a moderate pace. After bowing, she stood behind Kenshin. Following that, the 10,000 soldiers under the direct command of the Seven Slaughter Divine King gathered in the plaza and arranged themselves in formation. A total of 28,000 soldiers were all respectful and reverent to Kenshin. They were waiting for the oath of allegiance to Kenshin to be read. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and shot out a few rays of white light. They condensed into a huge light screen in the sky above the plaza. Large dark golden words appeared and displayed the contents of the oath of allegiance. Without needing him to urge them, the 28,000 soldiers began to read the contents of the oath. Of course, with so many soldiers reading the oath at the same time, it was very difficult for them to speak in unison and advance in unison. Some spoke quickly, some spoke slowly. There were also some who saw the contents of the oath clearly. They were so frightened that their faces turned pale and their bodies trembled. The voices of the many soldiers were uneven, causing the plaza to be noisy and somewhat chaotic. The dull sound waves were like a mountain torrent, reverberating between heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing watched everything indifferently. The left and right protectors, the 40 divine king generals, and the star lords were monitoring the 28,000 soldiers attentively. They wanted to share the burden of the Kenshin and see which soldier was bold enough to pretend to read the oath while actually bluffing his way through. Little did they expect that the left and right protectors would be lucky enough to find a few conceited idiots among the 28,000 soldiers. Those few soldiers had thought that it would be difficult for them to be discovered even if they did not open their mouths to read the oath in the midst of the 20,000 soldiers. If their performance was more realistic, they would be able to sit back and relax as long as they opened their mouths without making any sound or reciting the contents of the oath. Therefore, the few people who were found looked solemn on the surface, as if they were reading the oath seriously. On the other hand, the officers and soldiers who seemed hesitant, pale, and weird were actually reciting their oaths. The left and right protectors and the star lords found 7 soldiers who were trying to bluff their way through. They tied them up and brought them to Ji Tianqing for Ji Tianqing to deal with. Ji Tianqing glanced at them and waved his hand, hinting for the left and right protectors and the star lords to step back. After the 2 protectors and the star lords left, the 7 soldiers all knelt on the ground and begged for mercy in tears. Obviously, they thought that Kenshin was going to make an example of them. They were so scared that their bodies were almost paralyzed. Ji Tianqing, however, did not kill them. He simply waved his hand and released a few streaks of golden light to remove their seals and restraints. The 7 soldiers were stunned for a moment, before they realized that Kenshin had forgiven them. After they escaped death, they felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. It was as if they had just survived a calamity, and they hurriedly kowtowed to Ji Tianqing to express their gratitude. Then, without any supervision, they read the oath of surrender loudly and gratefully. Chapter 4395. Almost everyone thought that the 7 soldiers who had been pulled out would be unlucky. Even if they didn't die, they would at least lose a layer of skin. However, no one expected Kenshin to be so magnanimous as to forgive them. The hearts of the 20,000+ soldiers finally settled back into their stomachs. The left and right protectors and the star masters were slightly disappointed, but they didn't dare to show it. Only the heavenly phoenix star master watched this scene silently. A smile flashed across her eyes as she looked at Ji Tianqing with even more respect and admiration. The ordinary soldiers were too weak. They could only consider the problems from the perspective of the 7 soldiers. The left and right protectors and the star masters were also short-sighted. They only considered their own interests and only wanted to perform in front of Kenshin. However, Kenshin was different. He was the ruler of the entire star field and a supreme expert. The heavenly phoenix star master could imagine that Kenshin didn't just rely on his strength to subdue the god realm and intimidate millions of people. For a superior, he could only control countless troops and win the respect of his people by combining kindness and coercion. Everyone knew about Kenshin's power and influence. The soldiers' fear of Kenshin was already deeply ingrained in their bones. There was no need to strengthen it. Thus, Kenshin's generosity and benevolence at this moment wasn't just a gift to the 7 soldiers, but also to the rest of the 20,000 soldiers. After all, no one wanted Kenshin to be like the 7 Slayer King, who used his strength to suppress everything and tyrannical power to rule the masses. The entire heavenly phoenix star field only had fear and resentment toward the 7 Slayer King. There wasn't much loyalty to speak of. The heavenly Phoenix Star Master had long understood this. Thus, he had endured the humiliation until now, waiting for an opportunity to turn things around. A quarter of an hour later, the 28,000 soldiers finished reciting the oath of surrender one after another. Everyone's body lit up with divine light. Taoist rhymes appeared above their heads, causing the entire square to be drowned in five-colored divine light. Lightning and thunder appeared above Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace, covering a radius of tens of thousands of miles. The deafening sound of thunder reverberated between heaven and earth. An invisible and vast heavenly might enveloped the 28,000 soldiers, causing them to be filled with reverence and fear. After personally experiencing the might of the heavens, everyone knew that the rumors were true. Kenshin could indeed control the power of the heavenly Tao, borrowing the will of the heavenly Tao to control everything. Because of this, no one dared to take any chances, and everyone was in awe of Kenshin. They had no doubt that they would be punished by the heavenly Tao even if they had such intentions, let alone going against the will of the Kenshin and harming the interests of the Kenshin. Another quarter of an hour passed. When the thunderbolts in the sky gradually dissipated, the sacred heavenly might gradually faded away. At this moment, more than 100 elite guards rushed back from afar. They were the same group of scouts who had been ordered to check the entrance of the secret realm. At this time, they had investigated the situation at the entrance of the mystic realm and rushed back to report the situation. However, when the scouts returned to Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace and saw the situation in the square, they were dumbfounded. They had thought that the 20,000 soldiers gathered in the square must have been summoned by the Seven Slayer King to lead the soldiers to fight the Kenshin. However, when they got closer, they realized that the Seven Slayer King had disappeared. More than 20,000 soldiers were respectful to a handsome and valiant young man in a white robe. The white-robed youth's appearance and aura were very special, causing people to feel fearful, as if they were facing the vast heavenly might. Just like this, the scouts stopped at the edge of the square and stared blankly at Ji Tianqing and the others in the sky, not knowing what to do. Everyone's eyes were focused on them, and their expressions were very complicated. Some people had gloating expressions, some had sympathetic expressions, and some felt sad and helpless. What happened? Where is the God King? Why did he become a white-robed youth? The situation doesn't seem right. Did we miss something? No, I feel like we shouldn't have come back. More than 100 scouts were whispering to each other, feeling very uneasy. At this time, the Heavenly Phoenix Astral Master took the initiative to welcome the scouts. Everyone, the main culprit who has oppressed and enslaved the Heavenly Phoenix Galaxy for thousands of years, the heinous Seven Slayer King, has been killed by Lord Kenshin. At this time, all the soldiers present have forsaken the darkness and joined the light, swearing loyalty to Lord Kenshin. We've been waiting for you and the more than 1,000 soldiers patrolling around the mystic realm to join the Sword God's command. The Heavenly Phoenix Astral Master's expression was calm, and her tone was solemn. She used even simpler words to explain the current situation to the scouts. More than 100 scouts were stunned, and some of them even cried out in surprise. However, they were all grateful to the Heavenly Phoenix Astral Master because she had immediately let them understand their situation. After a short period of being stunned, the scouts flew to the square under the guidance of the Heavenly Phoenix Astral Master. They bowed to Ji Tianqing and expressed their surrender. Ji Tianqing accepted their surrender and used a white light screen to display the contents of the Heavenly Oath, allowing the scouts to swear it on the spot. After this matter was over, Ji Tianqing ordered the Heavenly Phoenix Astral Master and the left and right protectors to gather the 1,000 patrolling guards and return to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. The 1,000 patrolling guards were too far away from the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. They didn't know what had happened and were still carrying out their tasks. After receiving the orders from the Heavenly Phoenix Astral Master and the left and right protectors, they rushed back to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace without hesitation and gathered at the square. Then, a similar scene repeated itself. Seeing the 20,000 people in the square and the unfamiliar white-robed youth, the 1,000 patrolling guards were stunned. They didn't know what had happened. It was still the Heavenly Phoenix Astral Master and the left and right protectors who came forward to explain what had happened and persuade them to surrender and pledge their loyalty. Even though this sudden and unforeseen event had too great of an impact on them, causing them to be unable to recover their strength and recover their wits. They believed that the Heavenly Phoenix Astral Master and the left and right protectors wouldn't harm them. Therefore, more than 1,000 guards also recited the oath of surrender in front of everyone in a muddle-headed state. The square was once again filled with divine light and was enveloped by a formless heavenly might. The sky above the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace was once again filled with earth-shattering thunderbolts. After 15 minutes, the thunderbolts and the formless heavenly might dissipated, and everything returned to normal. At this time, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace was intact. Not a single room was damaged, and the 30,000 soldiers were all intact. Everything was the same as before. Other than the Seven Slayer King being killed and turned into ashes, everything else was the same as before. However, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace had changed hands. The Heavenly Phoenix planet and the entire Heavenly Phoenix starfield had fallen into Kenshin's control. It was so easy, and it was as fast as lightning. It was simply unheard of. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 4396. Before Ji Tianqing entered the Heavenly Phoenix planet, he had already decided on a plan to subdue the Heavenly Phoenix domain. He wanted to go straight to the source of the problem, just like how Pan Roa subdued the Seven Slayer King back then, avoiding tens of thousands of soldiers and directly finishing him off. However, he did not expect that after finishing off the Seven Slayer King, subduing tens of thousands of soldiers would be so easy and smooth. Basically, anyone who saw him could only submit obediently, without even the slightest thought of resistance. Of course, the reason for this was because of his strength and fame. However, more of it was the result of the Seven Slayer King himself. For 1,000 years, the Seven Slayer King had been overbearing, tyrannical, cruel, and ruthless. He did not win the hearts of the people at all. Even the 30,000 soldiers in the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace who were ordered to help him fight against the Kenshin were actually deceived and unwilling to do so. In addition, the Seven Slayer King had the Heavenly Phoenix Star Master under his command. The Heavenly Phoenix Star Master, who had endured humiliation, had actually been accumulating forces all along, waiting for the opportunity to turn the tables and take revenge. All these factors led to the 30,000 soldiers surrendering so easily. As the saying went, those who commit injustice are doomed to destruction. The Seven Slayer King's ending proved this sentence. The 30,000 soldiers had all sworn their loyalty, except for the Heavenly Phoenix Star Master. Although he had already considered himself as a subordinate of the Kenshin, taking the initiative to help the Kenshin stabilize the situation and arrange for those soldiers. However, he had not yet recited the oath of surrender. The left and right protectors, hundreds of Divine King generals, and the Star Masters all noticed this and were silently thinking about it. Therefore, under everyone's gaze, Ji Tianqing took out a jade slip and handed it to the Heavenly Phoenix Star Master. Everyone understood what this meant. The Heavenly Phoenix Star Master had long been mentally prepared. She calmly took the jade slip and prepared to recite the oath. However, many Divine King powerhouses noticed this detail and could not help but speculate. When Lord Kenshin asked us to swear our loyalty, he waved his palm and produced a white light, presenting the contents of the Heavenly Tao Oath for us to recite together. Why did he take out an exquisite jade slip for swearing his loyalty? It seems that the treatment given to him by Lord Kenshin is not the same as ours. I have a bad premonition. I keep having the feeling that that guy is going to soar into the sky. Just as the left and right protectors, God generals, and Star Masters were discussing, the Heavenly Phoenix Star Master glanced at the Heavenly Tao Oath in the jade slip, and her expression changed slightly. Previously, when the 30,000 soldiers were reciting their oaths in several batches, he was present to watch and listen. He could even recite the contents of the oaths back to back. But at this moment, he discovered that the contents of the heavenly Tao oath in the jade slip that Kenshin had given him were somewhat different from what everyone else had read. At the very least, the heavenly Tao oath in the jade slip actually reached over 1,000 words. When he took a closer look, he found that the content of the pledge was much more detailed and demanding than the pledges that the soldiers had made. The heavenly Phoenix Star Master was stunned for a moment. She subconsciously raised her head to look at Ji Tianqing, her eyes filled with doubt. However, Ji Tianqing's expression was calm, and no one could tell what he was thinking. The heavenly Phoenix Star Master pondered for a moment and suddenly guessed a possibility. Instantly, her heart skipped a beat, and her blood flowed faster. Lord Kenshin treated me differently and gave me such a strict heavenly Tao oath. There must be another reason for this. Could it be that Lord Kenshin wants me to take charge of the heavenly Phoenix Star after he leaves the heavenly Phoenix Star region? It's very likely. That's most likely the case. It's precisely because of this that Lord Kenshin's requirements for me are even more stringent, and the heavenly Tao oath he gave me is also more detailed. The heavenly Phoenix Star Master felt that this guess was 80% correct. He also understood the principle that rewards and sacrifices corresponded to each other. If Kenshin wanted to give him the greatest power and status, he would definitely ask for his 100% loyalty and wholeheartedly work for him. If he wasn't loyal enough, or if he wasn't capable enough, then Kenshin could very well choose other God King experts to take charge of the heavenly Phoenix Star region. In any case, there were more than 100 God King experts present. Among them, there was no lack of high-level God Kings who also had the corresponding ability and ambition. For example, the left and right protectors had been salivating for a long time. Didn't he see that their eyes were filled with envy and jealousy at this moment? Thinking of this, the heavenly Phoenix Star Master suppressed his excitement. He didn't care how strict the contents of the oath in the jade slip were, and immediately began to read it out loud. The 30,000 soldiers were staring at him. The left and right protectors and the numerous God King experts were also eyeing him covetously. As long as one was quick-witted, they would be able to guess that he was about to soar and be put in an important position by Kenshin. Therefore, some narrow-minded people even hoped that he would make a mistake. The heavenly Phoenix Star Master naturally understood these people's thoughts. He definitely couldn't give up and miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. No matter how harsh and terrifying the contents of the oath were, his expression didn't change. From beginning to end, his voice was loud and clear, and he read the oath with full vigor. After a few minutes, the heavenly Phoenix Star Master finished reading the heavenly Tao oath with a solemn expression. From beginning to end, he didn't hesitate at all. Even his tone didn't change much. On the contrary, the expressions of the 100 God Kings and 30,000 soldiers became very interesting when they heard the 1,000-word oath. It was only now that everyone understood that although the oath they had read out earlier was detailed and harsh, it wasn't the most terrifying part. After all, after they submitted to Kenshin, they would only be ordinary soldiers and subjects. They wouldn't occupy too important a position. However, the oath that the heavenly Phoenix Star Master read out was the most terrifying. This also proved that he would become Kenshin's spokesperson in the heavenly Phoenix domain and his most trusted aide. He would definitely control the entire domain. As expected, Ji Tianqing waited for 100 breaths of time. When the thunder and invisible heavenly might dissipated, he announced to everyone, "From now on, the heavenly Phoenix Star Master will oversee the heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace and control the heavenly Phoenix Star. All soldiers will be under his control. He only needs to answer to me." With such a simple sentence, it confirmed the heavenly Phoenix Star Master's supreme position, directly replacing the 7 Slaughter God King's former position. The left and right protectors, the various God Generals, and the Star Masters were filled with disappointment and jealousy. However, they couldn't show it. They could only bow respectfully and say, "Yes, sir." Next, Ji Tianqing started to issue orders and arrange a series of tasks for the soldiers. He left 10,000 soldiers to guard the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. The other 20,000 soldiers were led by dozens of god kings to repair the defensive array at the entrance of the mystic realm. The remaining dozens of god kings, including the Heavenly Phoenix Star Master and the left and right protectors, had to follow Ji Tianqing back to the conference hall to discuss the next step of the plan. Soon, the 30,000 soldiers received their orders and went to carry out their tasks in an orderly manner. Ji Tianqing and the dozens of god kings also gathered in the conference hall. Ji Tianqing officially assigned everyone their duties and tasks. Ji Tianqing had already subdued so many generals and star masters. However, he wanted to completely control the Heavenly Phoenix domain and subdue the remaining 900 stars. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 4397. If he wanted to control the entire Heavenly Phoenix starfield, not only did he have to subdue all the elites, but he also had to subdue every Star-Lord. Only when thousands of Star-Lords swore loyalty to Ji Tianqing could he guarantee his right to rule the Heavenly Phoenix starfield. Of course, he didn't have the time to tour the Heavenly Phoenix starfield and force every Star-Lord to swear an oath of allegiance. This task was naturally given to the Heavenly Phoenix starfield, the left and right protectors, and the many godly generals. Ji Tianqing would leave behind a few copies of the Oath of Allegiance and issue an order for every Star-Lord to swear allegiance. When the time came, the Heavenly Phoenix Starfield's ruler, as the Heavenly Phoenix Starfield's ruler, would send the order to every starfield. The specific executors would be the godly generals. They would lead their elite soldiers to each starfield and ask the Star-Lords to swear allegiance in person. If anyone disobeyed the order, their fate would be obvious. They would have to be eliminated and replaced with an obedient Star-Lord. As for the left and right protectors, they would retain their original positions. Their power and status would be second only to the Heavenly Phoenix Starfield's ruler. They would assist the Heavenly Phoenix Starfield's ruler. In addition, they would supervise all the Star-Lords in the Heavenly Phoenix Starfield. All in all, Ji Tianqing used only a short span of 100 breaths and a dozen sentences to clearly divide the powers and responsibilities of the God Kings. Then, everyone quickly got into position and started to carry out various tasks. Ji Tianqing stayed at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace to command and wait for the various soldiers to report the results. Time passed quietly. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. With the efforts of more than 40 godly kings and 20,000 elite soldiers, the defensive array at the entrance of the secret realm was finally repaired. The Heavenly Phoenix Starfield was ordered by Ji Tianqing to select 10,000 elite soldiers from the 20,000 soldiers to guard the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace. They would be the Imperial Guards from now on. The remaining 10,000 soldiers would leave the Heavenly Phoenix planet with the Divine Generals and Star Lords. They would head to the major planets in the entire star zone to carry out the mission mentioned before. The Heavenly Phoenix Starfield was vast, and it would take a long time to travel between the various starfields. It could easily take years or even decades. However, Ji Tianqing believed that if the 36 godly generals and Star-Lords worked together, they could complete the task within 100 years at most and make the 900 Star-Lords swear allegiance to them. Day after day, the godly generals and Star-Lords left the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace and embarked on their journey. 10 days later, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Palace, the Heavenly Phoenix Starfield's ruler, the left and right protectors, and 10,000 Imperial Guards. The Heavenly Phoenix Starfield's rule to Starfield to restore Starfield. S to the Heavenly Phoenix Starfield. The Phoenix Starfield's no to Phoenix Starfield to the Phoenix Starfields to Starfield. To Starfield, S Dragon Starfield. To Emperor to Emperor God Starfields his Dragon Starfield, to Emperor to Dragon Emperor. The results proved that Emperor God Starfield had nothing to do with the Heavenly Phoenix Starfield. Therefore, Ji Tianqing left the Heavenly Phoenix Starfield's ruler and the left and right protectors after exhorting them. The god-slaying battleship returned to the void and continued to fly into the depths of the void. Ji Tianqing's next stop was the last starfield, the Celestial Unicorn Starfield. Speaking of the Celestial Unicorn Starfield, one had to mention Ji Tianqing's old subordinate, Ophiuchus, who was also the Dragon Realm's Luoho deity king. Ever since Emperor God King disappeared, Luoho deity king led a group of his old subordinates to establish the Myriad Demon Alliance in the Starsource continent. Luoho deity king was not a simple person. He was not as simple as Emperor God King and Kenshin's old servant. 1,000 years ago, he had predicted many things. Therefore, after he established the Myriad Demon Alliance, he only left a clone to guard the headquarters. His real body, however, was roaming the outer realms. In the process of roaming the outer realms, he met the elder of the Golden Crow tribe, Jinwu deity king. At that time, the Celestial Unicorn Starfield already had a Starfield Lord and the support of the God Emperor. However, Jinwu deity king's ambition was not small. Luoho deity king also wanted to borrow his power to nurture more forces. He always believed that his old master, Emperor God King, or his young master, Kenshin, would make a comeback and reappear in the world. Whether it was to find out the truth or to take revenge, Luoho deity king could not give up. He had to make sufficient preparations. Even if Emperor God King did not reappear, Kenshin would not be reborn and would completely disappear. Then, as the most loyal old servant, Luoho deity king also wanted to use his power to seek justice for his two masters. Therefore, Luoho deity king supported the elder of the Golden Crow tribe, Jinwu deity king, to establish a huge force in the Celestial Unicorn Starfield. After 1,000 years of development, the force controlled by Jinwu deity king was already the second largest force in the Celestial Unicorn Starfield. However, it was a pity that the Starfield Lord who controlled the Celestial Unicorn Starfield had the backing of the god of the underworld, who was also a peak deity king. As a result, no matter how hard Luoho deity king and Jinwu deity king worked, no matter how strong their forces were, they were unable to become the Starfield Lord and control the entire Celestial Unicorn Starfield. In the past few hundred years, their forces were constantly suppressed and weakened by the Celestial Unicorn Starfield Lord. Long before Ji Tianqing traveled to the various starfields, he had learned of this crucial information from Luoho deity king. At that time, he thought that he would kill the Celestial Unicorn Starfield Lord one day and let Luoho deity king control the entire Celestial Unicorn Starfield. He did not expect that when he entered the outer realms and began to travel to the various starfields, he went in the opposite direction. This caused him to travel to the 8 starfields before finally arriving at the Celestial Unicorn Starfield. The god-slaying battleship roamed the void and headed straight for the Celestial Unicorn Starfield. At the same time, Ji Tianqing also sent out a communication jade slip to contact Luoho deity king. Back when Ji Tianqing was moving around in the Dragon Realm, Luoho deity king's incarnation had been accompanying him. In the end, Luoho deity king's original body brought Jinwu deity king back to the divine world to meet Ji Tianqing personally. However, when Luoho deity king found out that Ji Tianqing was going to travel to the various starfields, his original body left the Dragon Realm and returned to the Celestial Unicorn Starfield to make preparations. With the forces established by Luoho deity king and Jinwu deity king, Ji Tianqing believed that this trip to the Celestial Unicorn Starfield would be very smooth. After all, when he conquered the 5 continents of the divine world, as well as the Sky Crane and Sky Phoenix starfields, he did not have a foundation or a team. However, he was still able to conquer the continents of the divine world and the Sky Crane and Sky Phoenix starfields in a very short period of time. Without a foundation, he was still able to solve the problem so easily. In that case, under the circumstances where Luoho deity king and Jinwu deity king had already established a certain foundation, it would be easier for him to travel to the Celestial Unicorn Starfield. Chapter 4398. Of course, Ji Tianqing's decision to conquer the Sky Unicorn Star Zone was not because he coveted its territory and resources. It was also not because he wanted to enslave the people of the Sky Unicorn Star Zone and make them worship him. Instead, it was because the true ruler of the Sky Unicorn Star Zone was the god of the underworld. He had to take down this star zone and cut off the 5 god emperors' escape routes and resources. The god-slaying battleship's journey was always so dry and boring. Fortunately, the White Dragon was the only one who bore the burden of this boredom. Ji Tianqing had already entered the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda to cultivate in seclusion in the distorted spacetime. With the speed of an ordinary peak god king, it would take about half a year to travel from the Sky Phoenix Star Zone to the Sky Unicorn Star Zone. On the other hand, the god-slaying battleship only took 2 months to cross the vast void and the vast galaxy to reach the Sky Unicorn Star Zone. The name of the Sky Unicorn Star Zone came about because the billions of stars in the star zone were arranged in the shape of a divine beast, the Qilin. This name had been passed down since the ancient era tens of thousands of years ago. After entering the Sky Unicorn Star Zone, Ji Tianqing ended his seclusion and contacted God King Luoho through a communication jade slip. Back then, he had told God King Luoho about his thoughts and plans before he traveled to the various star zones. God King Luoho naturally knew what he wanted to do, so he would do his best to investigate this matter after returning to the Sky Unicorn Star Zone. As expected. In less than half an hour, God King Luoho sent him a message back. In the communication jade slip, God King Luoho learned that Ji Tianqing had entered the Sky Unicorn Star Zone and was very excited and happy. He even wanted to lead his troops to welcome Ji Tianqing. However, he also knew that Ji Tianqing wanted to keep a low profile and not attract attention, so he could only dismiss this idea. Other than that, he also reported to Ji Tianqing the results of his investigation over the past 30 years. In fact, several hundred years ago, when he supported the Golden Fifth God King to establish a force in the Sky Unicorn Star Zone, he had already investigated the whereabouts of the Sky Dragon Emperor. And the result of the investigation at that time was that before Heavenly Dragon Emperor disappeared, he did pass by the Sky Unicorn Star region, but only a few insignificant things happened. Just based on those small details and clues, it was impossible to conclude that Sky Unicorn Star region was related to Heavenly Dragon Emperor's disappearance. Even though God King Rahu had already investigated the matter and came to a conclusion. However, Ji Tianqing wanted to investigate again, and God King Rahu agreed without hesitation. For the past 30 years, he had been worrying about this matter. Although he had supported the 5th Divine King Jinwu to establish the second strongest force in the Sky Unicorn Star Zone, the 5th Divine King Jinwu Star Zone was still in the Sky Unicorn Star Zone. But in the past 100 years, their Golden Net Alliance had suffered the strictest suppression and attacks of Region Lord Heavenly Qilin. In the past 30 years, not only did the Jinluo Alliance's power not expand further, it had shrunk a lot and was restricted in every way. Luoho Divine King's main focus was on investigating Heavenly Dragon Emperor's clues, which caused Jinluo Alliance's power to weaken further. Now that things had come to this, even with the support of the Luoho God King, it was very difficult for the Golden Net Alliance to contend with the Heavenly Qilin Region Lord. However, God King Rahu had long known that the young master would definitely go to Sky Unicorn Star region. Therefore, in the past 30 years, Jinluo Alliance's power had declined again and again, and they were even suppressed by the Heavenly Qilin Region Lord to the point where they could not raise their heads. No matter how anxious and worried the Jinwu God King was, he was not anxious at all. He had been concentrating on investigating the clues. Unfortunately, after 30 years of hard work, he only got one result in exchange. It was no different from hundreds of years ago. All kinds of clues and signs showed that Heavenly Dragon Emperor's disappearance was not related to Sky Unicorn Star region. God King Rahu also reported this result to Ji Tianqing truthfully. When Ji Tianqing learned of this result, he naturally felt a little disappointed. However, he did not blame God King Rahu, and he would not give up on entering Sky Unicorn Star region. He said to White Dragon through voice transmission, Ophiuchus has already investigated Sky Unicorn Star region and proved that Master's disappearance is not related to this star region. We don't have to explore the stars one by one anymore. Let's go straight to Jinyuan Star and meet up with Ophiuchus. White Dragon had been controlling the battleship in the control room. When he heard Ji Tianqing's words, he responded. Then, he controlled the god-slaying battleship and accelerated toward Jinyuan Star. Previously, he had planned to slow down the battleship and search for nearby stars. Now, there was no need for that. Jinyuan Star was one of the bigger earthly fiend stars in Sky Unicorn Star region. This star's size, divine power, and abundance of resources were among the best among all the earthly fiend stars. It was second only to the Big Dipper star. There were 5 continents and hundreds of divine kingdoms on this star. More than 100 billion people lived there. The Golden Net Alliance's headquarters was set up on this star. It was located in the sea region between the 3 continents, in an alternate dimension. Only places like the God World, which was blessed by heaven and earth and had abundant divine power and resources, would have blessed paradises. Like Jinyuan Star and the 9 major star regions, there were only secret realms and alternate dimensions of various sizes. They were far from the standard of blessed paradises. Even so, the secret realm occupied by the Golden Net Alliance had a radius of 500,000 miles and could accommodate more than 30,000 alliance members. Over the past few hundred years, with the support of God King Rahu, the Golden Net Alliance had built this secret realm into an impregnable fortress. No matter how the outer forces of the Golden Net Alliance fought with the Sky Unicorn region leader, or even suffered losses, their base was still as stable as a mountain. In the past 30 years, God King Rahu had mobilized close to 20,000 alliance members to investigate the Heavenly Dragon Emperor. He had really put in a lot of effort and did not care about the cost. In fact, some of the generals and God King experts in the Golden Net Alliance did not agree with this. In their opinion, God King Rahu had already investigated a few hundred years ago and the answer was very clear. Why did he have to do it again? However, after God King Jinwu knew what everyone was thinking, he used a very simple sentence to shut everyone up. This is Lord Kenshin's order. We are working for Lord Kenshin. The generals and God King experts of the Golden Net Alliance had naturally heard of Kenshin's glorious deeds and legendary battle achievements. Many of them admired Kenshin. However, they did not understand the relationship between the Golden Net Alliance and Kenshin. They also did not know the relationship between Alliance Master Rahu and Kenshin. However, they believed that Alliance Master Jinwu would not spout nonsense. Since the Golden Luo League was able to establish a relationship with the Sword God, it was definitely an exciting matter. Since then, no one had criticized God King Rahu's actions. Even if the Golden Net Alliance's power kept shrinking and the Alliance members' situation became more and more difficult, they were still full of confidence and never gave up. This was because they knew that Lord Kenshin would sooner or later be like a savior and descend on the Sky Unicorn Star region. He would lead the Golden Net Alliance to defeat the Sky Unicorn region leader and rule the entire star region. And now, the wish of tens of thousands of Golden Net Alliance members was finally going to be realized. It was a pity that God King Rahu had kept this news a secret. Other than God King Jinwu, he did not allow anyone else to know. He did not want to destroy the young lord's plan because of a moment of excitement. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 4399. Ever since God King Luoho learned that the young master would be coming to planet Jinyuan soon, he had been very happy and looking forward to it. Of course, in order to show the Jin Luo alliance to the young master, he began to mobilize the alliance members and adjust the defense of planet Jinyuan. It was not that he wanted to cheat, nor was it that he wanted to claim credit from Ji Tianqing. Instead, he wanted to gain the young master's approval and let the young master see that his efforts over the past few hundred years were fruitful and effective. In the past few decades, the Jinluo alliance had been suppressed and pressured by the celestial Qilin region master, so it was common for them to mobilize their forces. Therefore, God King Luoho's adjustment of the defense of planet Jinyuan did not arouse anyone's suspicion. Only God King Jinwu sensed that something was wrong and guessed that God King Luoho must have received some information to make such a meaningless decision. Therefore, he went to God King Luoho in private and asked him what was going on. God King Luoho did not hide anything from him and told him about Kenshin's arrival. After all, with God King Jinwu's wisdom, it was not difficult for him to guess. When God King Jinwu learned that Kenshin was coming, he was filled with excitement and anticipation. He wanted to help God King Luoho adjust the defense and decorate the headquarters of the Jinluo alliance. Of course, God King Luoho had no objections and readily agreed. Therefore, under God King Jinwu's control, 3,000 maids, servants, and guards began decorating the mystic realm. God King Luoho was happy to be free and could spare more energy to adjust the combat power of the Jinluo alliance. He began to think about the follow-up plan and tried his best to prepare in advance. Once the young master arrived, there would be elite members waiting to carry out the young master's orders. This was because he knew the young master's nature very well. This time, the young master came to planet Jinyuan not just to visit him. He would definitely eliminate the celestial Qilin region master and support the Jinluo alliance. 2 months later, the god-slaying battleship arrived at planet Jinyuan. During the journey, the god-slaying battleship remained invisible and advanced in the dark void. No one noticed it, so naturally, there were no disturbances to speak of. White Dragon drove the god-slaying battleship. Ji Tianqing and all his friends and followers cultivated in seclusion in the god-slaying battleship and distorted spacetime. Those followers who were injured back then were gradually recovering from their injuries. This was especially so for those who were in seclusion in the distorted spacetime. Not only were their injuries healed, but their strength had also improved tremendously. Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, Zhen Hong, Lin Shui, and the others entered the Middle God King realm one after another. Bai Feng was close to the 9th level of the Divine King realm. Chao Qingyu and Yank had also broken through to the high-level Divine King realm. After the previous battle, Yin Yao and Ji Ku had suffered serious injuries. However, they had also benefited greatly from the battle. Their strength had steadily advanced to the 9th level of the Divine King realm. As for Ji Tianqing, he didn't seem to have changed much on the surface. He was still as powerful and unfathomable as before. But in reality, his strength had also improved tremendously. Presently, he already reached 72 times that of ordinary peak Divine Kings. Logically speaking, the stronger one was, the more difficult it would be to improve. Ji Tianqing felt the same way, but he did not feel that it was too difficult, nor did he feel that he had reached a bottleneck. Just as he had guessed, before his strength reached 99 times that of a peak Divine King, it would be a smooth journey. There would not be any bottlenecks or shackles. After the god-slaying battleship entered Jinyuan Star, it headed straight for the sea region in the middle of the 3 continents according to Luoho Divine King's instructions. The sea region, which was tens of millions of miles wide, was extremely dangerous. It was called the Storm Sea. There was a huge whirlpool in the center of the sea region. It had a diameter of tens of thousands of miles. It was like a hole in the stars, endlessly devouring seawater. It would never be filled. The headquarters of the Golden Net Alliance, the Storm Mystic Realm, was right below the Eye of the Sea. The Eye of the Sea, which was tens of thousands of miles wide, looked extremely terrifying and imposing. The Eye of the Sea swallowed seawater day and night. It also gathered the spiritual energy and divine power of heaven and earth within 100 million miles and channeled them all into the Eye of the Sea. Hence, Luoho Divine King and Jinwu Divine King set up a formation in the depths of the eye of the sea to guide the spiritual energy and divine power of heaven and earth into the mystic realm. The storm mystic realm was extremely rich in divine power and cultivation resources. The god-slaying battleship stopped right above the eye of the sea. Ji Tianqing ended his closed-door cultivation and left the distorted spacetime. The hatch of the battleship opened and Ji Tianqing stepped out. He stood in the sky and looked down at the sea below. White Dragon followed behind him. He also looked around curiously and expectantly. Although Xingyuan star is only an earthly fiend star, it's not bad that Ophiuchus could find such a place with such excellent spiritual energy on this star. Ji Tianqing was satisfied with the location of the Golden Net Alliance's headquarters. Of course, his arrival on Xingyuan star meant that the Golden Net Alliance's headquarters would soon be changed. At that time, they would definitely not stay on Xingyuan star. Instead, they would stay on the highest grade star in the Celestial Unicorn Star Zone, Celestial Unicorn Star Zone. Let's go. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and stepped into the eye of the sea with White Dragon. They flew toward the bottom of the whirlpool. In the blink of an eye, the master and disciple disappeared into the whirlpool as if they were swallowed by the endless seawater. After the master and disciple flew down for 1,000 miles, a blue light curtain appeared in front of them. It rippled like water. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing was the first to pass through the blue light curtain. White Dragon followed closely behind him. In the next moment, the master and disciple arrived at an alternate space. The surroundings were pitch black. The seawater and whirlpool had disappeared. In the middle of the pitch-black space with a radius of 100 miles, there was a white light gate that was 1,000 feet tall. The light gate was the entrance to the secret realm of storm. There were 2 immortal kings and 200 elite immortal emperors guarding the gate. The guards wore dazzling armor and held swords and sabers that flickered with cold light. They stood straight and exuded a mighty and majestic aura. Obviously, they were the most elite guards of the Golden Net Alliance. All of them were in high spirits and looked mighty and dignified. Ji Tianqing looked at the guards and couldn't help but chuckle. Ophiuchus, you're still wasting your time on these little tricks. White Dragon understood what his master meant. He meant that the guards were arranged on purpose to show the strength and spirit of the Golden Net Alliance. He smiled and said, Master, we can't think like that. It might not be Ophiuchus's intention. Maybe the Golden Net Alliance really has the strength to do so. Besides, even if Ophiuchus arranged it on purpose, it's also to show his respect and welcome to you. Ji Tianqing smiled and didn't say anything else. He walked toward the light gate with White Dragon. When the 200 guards and the 2 God King experts saw Ji Tianqing and White Dragon arrive, they immediately became vigilant and focused their attention. They knew the answer in their hearts. They guessed that the handsome white-robed youth was the legendary Lord Kenshin. However, they remembered the instructions of the Golden Fifth Immortal King. They didn't bow and scrape to welcome them. Instead, they stuck to their principles and carried out their mission according to their duty. Chapter 4400. Sir, please wait. This is the forbidden area of our alliance. You are not allowed to enter without invitation. Please state your identities and intentions. We will report to our superiors. 2 God Kings stepped forward and held the hilts of their swords at their waists. They blocked Ji Tianqing and Bai Long's path as they spoke in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Bai Long understood what was going on. He thought to himself, Ophiuchus is indeed Master's old servant. He is so considerate. Ophiuchus made such an arrangement to please the young lord. However, he had a good sense of propriety and did not make others feel disgusted. Ji Tianqing appreciated this. Bai Long stepped forward and introduced himself to the two Supreme God Realm Guards. "This is Lord Kenshin. I am Lord Kenshin's disciple, Bai Long. Please go and report to the Alliance Master. He will naturally know why we are here." The two Supreme God Realm Guards and the 200 guards were mentally prepared. They had guessed the other party's identity. Now that they heard Bai Long admit it, they heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, they became more respectful. "Please wait for a moment. We will report to our superiors now." The two guards bowed and retreated quickly. They sent a message to Jinwu Divine King to report the news. Everything was set up and ready in the Mystery Land. Jinwu Divine King and Luoho Divine King were also waiting. They were ready to welcome Sword God. After receiving the message from the Supreme God Realm Guards, Jinwu Supreme God went to look for Luoho Supreme God. After that, Jinwu Divine King ordered everyone to get ready. The two of them personally led over 30 God King experts and 500 spirited guards to the entrance of the secret realm to welcome them. In less than 15 minutes, Luoho Supreme God and Jinwu Supreme God arrived at the entrance of the Mystery Land with the core members of the Jinluo Alliance. After the 1,000-feet-tall light gate was opened, the guards of honor walked out one after another, glittering with golden light. Luoho Divine King and Jinwu Divine King walked at the front. They were filled with excitement and joy as they welcomed Ji Tianqing with smiles. "Welcome, young master. Greetings, Lord Kenshin." Everyone came before Ji Tianqing. Luoho Deity King and Jinwu Deity King were the first to bow. Over 30 deity kings and 500 guards followed suit. After a series of orderly greetings and shouts, everyone was full of awe and worship, looking at Ji Tianqing with bright eyes. Ji Tianqing waved his hand, gesturing for everyone to dispense with the formalities and stand up. He expressed his approval and appreciation of Luoho and the Fifth Divine King's arrangement in front of everyone. He also gave a few words of encouragement to the experts and guards of the Jinluo Alliance. Being able to see the legendary Kenshin with their own eyes was already an incomparably fortunate event. Now that they had received Kenshin's encouragement, they were even more elated. After a series of greetings, Luoho Divine King and Jinwu Divine King led the way and escorted Ji Tianqing through the light door. They truly entered the secret realm of storm. The secret realm was not big. It was only 100,000 miles in radius. It was incomparable to the blessed enclave in the realm of the gods. However, this small world was able to accommodate 30,000 members of the Jinluo Alliance and it did not feel crowded. The secret realm was rich in resources and spiritual energy. The environment was also very elegant. In addition, in the past 2 months, Jinwu Divine King had commanded 3,000 servants and maids to clean and decorate the secret realm. This made the scenery in the secret realm even more pleasant. Ji Tianqing, escorted by the guards of honor, flew for tens of thousands of miles. Along the way, he saw many beautiful scenery and mountains. He could tell that the Jinluo Alliance had put in a lot of effort and thought. Even though he did not care about vanity and superficial effort. Since the Jinluo Alliance was willing to put in so much effort to show their respect and welcome to him, he naturally accepted it. 15 minutes later, everyone returned to the headquarters of the Jinluo Alliance and landed on the highest peak among the mountains. There were many palaces and courtyards built on the dozens of peaks in the surrounding 800 miles. There were countless pavilions and towers. The 30,000 members of the Jinluo Alliance were divided into 36 divisions. They lived on the various peaks. The Jinluo Divine Palace in the middle was where Luoho Divine King lived. It was also where the Jinluo Alliance discussed important matters. The guards of honor retreated and the guards returned to their respective posts. Only Luoho, Jinwu Divine King, and more than 30 Divine King Realm Division leaders accompanied Ji Tianqing and Bai Long into the Great Light Palace. Ji Tianqing sat on the main throne. Bai Long stood respectfully behind him. Luoho and Jinwu Divine King stood in the Great Light Palace. The 36 division leaders were divided into 2 rows and stood respectfully. Previously, both parties had greeted each other and exchanged greetings. Now, there was no need for those formalities. Ji Tianqing went straight to the point and started to talk about business. Luoho first introduced the general situation of the Jin-Luo alliance and the strength of the core members. Then talk about the strength of the Celestial Qilin region lord and the forces under his command. Although Luoho Divine King had already introduced the relevant information to Ji Tianqing through a communication jade slip. But today, Ji Tianqing wanted to formulate a battle plan and arrange the following actions. Therefore, it was necessary for Luoho Divine King to introduce it in front of everyone. Luoho Divine King acknowledged and then gave a summary in front of everyone. First was the Jin-Luo Alliance. The name of the alliance was obviously based on the titles of Luoho Divine King and Jinwu Divine King. Both of them were alliance leaders. However, Luoho Divine King was the main alliance leader and had been living behind the scenes for a long time. Jinwu Divine King was the deputy alliance leader but had been in the Celestial Qilin Star Zone for a long time and had been fighting with the Celestial Qilin region lord. Under the 2 alliance leaders were the 4 great protectors. They were all 7th level Divine King realm experts. The 4 protectors were of different races and came from different stars. However, they had all been subdued by Jinwu Divine King and Luoho Divine King through various means. Based on the performance of the 4 protectors in the past few hundred years, there was no problem with their loyalty. Under the 4 great protectors were the 36 branch masters. These branch masters were all intermediate divine kings. Their strength was around the 5th and 6th level of the divine king realm. Every branch master had 1,000 elite divine monarchs under his command. A branch master had to control tens of thousands of outer alliance members and develop their forces on a few stars in a certain region. As such, the Jin-Luo alliance controlled over 300 stars through the 36 branch masters. They had over 1 million outer alliance members. However, the outer alliance members were weaker and their usefulness was limited. Basically, they could not participate in a large-scale battle. Their main purpose was to help the Jin-Luo alliance expand their forces and absorb wealth and cultivation resources. Those who had real fighting strength and were more loyal to the Jin-Luo alliance were the 36,000 divine monarchs. After introducing the Jin-Luo alliance, Luoho Divine King introduced the Celestial Qilin region lord's forces. Simply put, the Celestial Qilin region had over 1,000 stars. Among them, over 700 stars were under the jurisdiction of the Celestial Qilin region. The backer of the Celestial Qilin region lord was the god of the underworld. He had the strength of a 9th level divine king realm expert and could gather hundreds of divine king experts and close to 80,000 divine monarchs under his command. In terms of power, the Celestial Qilin region lord was more than twice as strong as the Jin-Luo alliance. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.